Good afternoon. This is the December 13th, 2022 meeting of the California Fish and Game Commission Tribal Committee. We have some initial business to cover with staff, and when it's time for attendees to participate, you will receive instructions on how to add yourself to the queue for speaking. As we did at the last Tribal Committee meeting, videos are enabled for everyone. Feel free to turn on your video if you would like, but it is certainly not required. Melissa will provide an overview of how to participate in this new hybrid meeting format.
Good afternoon and welcome to everyone to the Tribal Committee meeting. Today's meeting has both an in-person component as well as options to participate via Zoom or phone. Our physical location today is the Hamburger Hotel in San Diego. Our Tribal Committee Chair, Hostel Parmesan, is attending via Zoom. And we have Commission Vice President Zavaleta joining us here in person, along with multiple staff from the Commission, the department, who I'll introduce now. I am again Melissa Miller-Hanson, the Commission's Executive Director. You've heard already from your Tribal Advisor and Liaison, Chuck Strickland. We also have with us today in the room Ari Corman, the Commission's Wildlife Advisor, Susan Ashcraft, the Commission's Marine Advisor, Cynthia McKeith, one of our analysts at the Commission. We also have Kimmy Rogers, who is our California Sea Grant Fellow for this year. And then assisting us online, we have Jen Bacon, one of our analysts from the Commission. And then from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, we have with us in the room Sarah Fonseca, who is with the Wildlife Program Land Department Program. Okay. And then online from the department, we also have Jay Rowan, who is the branch chief for the Fisheries Branch, Chris Stutz, who is Assistant Chief and Tribal Liaison for the Law Enforcement Division, and Dr. Craig Shinman, who is the Regional Manager for the Marine Region. If you are participating in the Zoom meeting online and calling in by phone, please make sure that your phone number and your online Zoom meeting are linked. If you log into Zoom first, use the Call Me option. The link happens automatically. If you called in using another option, find the mute button at the bottom of the screen and click on the arrow to the right to bring up a menu where you can switch to phone audio. You will see a dialog box with a 4-digit number. On your phone, press pound, the 4-digit number, and pound again to link your phone audio to your online Zoom meeting. Please note that if you are joining by phone only and wish to contribute to an agenda item, staff will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. Zoom's chat feature will allow you to ask the host questions, and staff will be monitoring chat and responding to questions as much as possible. Again, you are welcome to turn on your video if you would like, but it is not required. For those participating in person, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized by Vice President Zavaleta. Back to you, Chair Hostel Parmesan.
You're muted, Jackie.
Thank you, Chuck. I'd like to welcome Vice President Erica Zavaleta, our visiting commissioner today, and I'd like to give Erica a minute to introduce herself.
Thank you, Commissioner Hostel Parmesan. Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for participating today and taking the time, in particular for those of you who are here in person, to travel. I'm Erica Zavaleta. I joined the commission in early 2021, so I'm still really enjoying the opportunity to finally be in person with some of you, and also enjoying the expanded participation that this hybrid format allows us. As my day job is I'm on the faculty at the University of California at Santa Cruz in ecology and evolutionary biology. And I guess just a couple of things I want to say. I think I join all of our current commissioners in taking really seriously our trust relationship with sovereign tribal governments, and as well as the perspectives and the values of all Californians, including those historically excluded from decisions in this space. So it's a real priority for me to attend these tribal community meetings and to hear from you. Please always consider me available and interested in hearing directly. And I want to thank Commissioner Hochler-Carmison for her leadership of the committee, and our tribal advisor, Chuck Strickland, and all of our staff for their expertise and support.
Thank you, Vice President Zavaleta. And also I'd like to introduce Chuck Strickland, our tribal advisor. Chuck.
Thank you, Chair Hochler-Carmison. Yes, my name is Chuck Strickland. I'm the tribal advisor and liaison for the commission. I started about 18 or 19 months ago as the very first tribal advisor and liaison for the commission, kind of rounding out the complement of advisors. So we now have a full-time advisor for marine resources, for wildlife, and for tribal issues. I moved soon from the Monterey Bay area. Got a master's and a PhD from the University of California, Berkeley in environmental science policy and management. And it is my great pleasure to serve at the Commission's pleasure, advising them on all matters related to tribal affairs.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
And I would just like to introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. My name is Jackie Hochler-Carmison. I am coming to you from the ancestral territory of the Yurok people in Northern California. And I work for Trinidad Rancheria as their CEO. Trinidad Rancheria is located on the coastal bluffs of Trinidad Bay in the Pacific Ocean. The tribes have been here since time immemorial and continue to thrive, manage, and protect their cultural and natural resources. And it's been my honor to work on the commission and focus on tribal issues since 2012. I was confirmed in 2013 and then reappointed in 2022. And a little later, I'll go into a little bit more, but I just want to say what an honor and a privilege it's been to be on the commission, and to thank Commissioners Zavaleta for being here today, as well as our tribal advisor and all of the commission staff and your hard work, as well as the department. So at this time, I'd like to go ahead and ask attendees to introduce themselves. We'd like to invite tribal leaders and attendees to introduce themselves first. First, if I can ask Vice President Zavaleta to lead in-person introductions. We'll go around the table in San Diego. And for those of you attending online, you may raise your hand using the Zoom raise hand feature, or if you are using a phone by pressing 9 only one time. And if you press 9 again, you will remove yourself from the queue. So don't do that. I will call your name, and when introducing yourself, please state your name, title, and your tribal affiliation. And you may turn on your video if you would like, but as said before, it's not required. Again, we'll start with any tribal leadership in attendance and then move to tribal citizens and members of the public.
Do we have any tribal leadership in attendance in person today? Okay. Commissioner Hochler-Carmison, I'll pass it back to you to introduce tribal leadership who are attending via Zoom.
Okay. Do I have tribal leaders attending virtually today? I believe I saw Chairman Buster Atterbury log on.
Yes, I am on.
Go ahead, Chairman.
Well, just take a moment to say Ayuki. Hello, how are you? I'm Buster Atterbury. I'm Karuk Tribal Chairman, and I'm really on to listen today and offer any direction or offer my 2 cents, I guess, if we will, on the some of the subjects are close to what the Karuk tribe have been advocating for, and for co-management and consultation. So when the time comes, I'll chime in. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Chairman. Do we have any other tribal leaders or tribal representatives online today? I believe I saw Buffy McQuillan on the participants list. Buffy, are you there?
Thank you. You caught me doing 20 million other things. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. Thank you so much, Commissioner Hassler-Carmerson, for giving us this opportunity. I'm Buffy McQuillan. I'm the TIPO for the Federated Indians of Great and Rancheria. Also happy and proud to be on the Native American Heritage Commission, serving as a commissioner, not working, wearing that hat today, but always want to acknowledge serving in that capacity. So thank you all.
Thank you, Buffy. Other tribal representatives.
I'll chime in. This is Miguel Luna. I work for the Fernandeño, Tatavi, and Banner Mission Indians, and I serve as the Tribal Historic and Cultural Preservation Department Director, and I'll be speaking more a little later. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining, Miguel.
My name is Stan Rodriguez. I am from the Santa Isabel Band of the Ipine Nation here in San Diego. I'm also the president of Kumeyaay Community College and Heritage Commissioner.
Welcome. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you today, Stan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other tribal representatives that would like to introduce themselves?
Hello, this is Fred Briones, tribal member at the Big Valley Rancheria Band of Pomo Indians located in Lakeport, California. I'm a traditional hunter, fisherman, and basket weaver for the Mission Roundhouse. I wanted to comment about the last week's meeting, but I'll do that later. Thank you for your work that you have placed tribes here at this opportunity to have the microphone. Thank you for those who did that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Other tribal representatives. I see we have Ruthie Maloney. I know, Ruthie, you work for, you're working in the marine stewardship and protected areas. Would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you. Ayukwi, Naknau Ruthie Maloney. I am from the villages of Turup and Witchpeck. I'd just like to thank Jackie Hassler-Carmerson and the rest of the Fish and Game Commission to providing this platform for tribes to voice their concerns and our issues in regards to policy and management of our natural resources. So wakla. Yes, I am Ruthie Maloney. I am the owner of REM Consulting and also the founder of North Coast Native Protectors. I wear many hats, and I'm also the regional tribal consultant for the Marine Protected Areas Decadal Management Review report. So I'm one of the regional tribal consultants, one of 5 that was hired by Strategic Earth to do outreach to tribes in regards to the marine protected areas and how tribes were affected by the policy. And we provided a voice and their concerns and or issues in the Decadal Management Review report. And I will get into that later on, but yes, it's a pleasure to be here. So thank you. Wakla.
Thank you, Ruthie. I'm going to pick on Sam Cohen. I see you're in the participants list today. Sam, welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair Hostler Karmazin. Sam Cohen with the San Ynez Band of Chumash Indians. Having spent many years working on marine protected areas in the Channel Islands, we now turn our attention to the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary, where we're trying to develop co-management similar to a model that was previously done on the Olympic Peninsula. So it's a pleasure to be here. I think I'm going to change to my cell phone after this. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. It's always a pleasure to have you participate. Thank you. Thank you for all your work. Any other tribal representatives today?
Hauka, Anya, Emily, Rina Chuhi, Mata Konan Kopai, Napum, Sinaukotun. Hello, my name is Emily Bergano. I'm from Esquanan, also known as the Ipai Nation of San Isabel. And I'm also listening with Chairwoman Pipa. She can introduce herself.
Okay, I'm Bernice Pipa, Chairwoman of the Ipai Nation. I also sit on many cultural boards for the Kumeyaay Nation. I'm Chairwoman of the Kumeyaay Heritage Preservation Council, and I sit on the Kumeyaay Cultural Repatriation Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman. And Emily, thank you.
I guess I'll jump in. Hello all, Ayukwe, Neknau, Tiana Williams-Clausen. I'm a Yurok tribal member, and I am the director. I'm here in my capacity as the director of the Yurok Tribes Wildlife Departments. Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss these issues today, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Tiana. We're glad you're on. Did we miss anyone?
Good afternoon, Chair Hostler Carmison. This is Cindy Smallwood, Environmental Director for the Humboldt Indian Village of California.
Hi, Cindy. Wonderful. Thank you for joining.
Alga Ninyu Temoa, Christy Orozco, Weenie Chuhi, San Pasqual, Matkupai. And I'm joining you here from San Pasqual Indian Reservation. I'm Christy Orozco for San Pasqual Culture Committee and Kumeyaay Cultural Committee. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you very much.
Dalaha, everyone. This is Rachel McCain. I'm the Natural Resources Director at the Tolowadeni Nation in Smith River. Really happy to be a part of this conversation and look forward to making progress with you all.
Thank you, Rachel. Any other tribal representatives? Okay, with that, thank you again, everyone. Let's move to approve the agenda and the order of the items. Vice President Zavaleta, do you have any proposed changes to the agenda?
No changes to the agenda, and I just want to circle back and make sure that if there are others who want to introduce themselves in the room, we have a chance to do that. Is that okay, Commissioner Hostler-Carmison?
Oh, absolutely. I just didn't think there were any other representatives, but if we miss somebody, I definitely want them to introduce.
So double checking about in the room here. Would any of you like to introduce yourself? Yes,
I'm
thank you.
Crystal Moreno. I'm the program manager for traditional ecological knowledge for the Shingle Springs Band of Ewalking.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Were you able to hear that, Jack, Commissioner Hassler-Carmen?
Yes, thank you. So no proposed changes to the agenda from Vice President Zavaleta. Chuck, do you have proposed changes?
I do not, Chair Hassler-Carmen.
Thank you. So for tribes in attendance today, and for those who may want to recommend changes to the agenda of future meetings, you're welcome to bring them up during today's general public comment item, or reach out directly to the tribal advisor and liaison at any time. Chuck, let's go ahead and get started if we can, please.
Great. If you would like to discuss agenda item number 1 related to the agenda and the order of items, and you are on the Zoom online meeting, please use the raise hand button to raise your hand. If you are participating on your computer, the raise hand button is located at the bottom of the window and also at the bottom of the participants list. You may have to hover your pointer over the Zoom window for the row of options to appear. On the mobile app, raise hand is located at the bottom of your screen. If you have muted your audio, you may need to unmute yourself. If you are on the phone only, please press *9 on your phone once to raise your hand. That'll alert us that will alert us that you'd like to be added to the queue. If you press *9 on your phone a second time, you will take yourself out of the queue. You may also need to unmute your phone if you have muted yourself. For the remaining agenda items, we will generally call for speakers here in San Diego first, then participants on Zoom. However, committee meetings are designed to accommodate thorough discussion of items on the agenda, so we'll certainly be flexible in managing the meeting and discussion. I'll turn it back to you, Chair Hassler-Carmen, if there are any folks that would like to speak to the agenda.
Thank you, Chuck.
We don't have any raised hands here in the room, and I don't see any on Zoom. Move forward.
Okay. So let's go ahead and move to item 2, the annual tribal planning meeting. We'd like to discuss updates on priorities identified at the July 20th, 2022 tribal planning meeting, held annually pursuant to the Commission's tribal consultation policy, and start initial discussions on the 2023 meeting planning. The purpose identified in policy as to create a means by which tribes and the Fish and Game Commission can effectively work together to realize sustainably managed natural resources of mutual interest, including communication, collaboration, record keeping, and training. Chuck, would you please provide the high points of that July 20th annual tribal planning meeting?
Certainly. In the meeting materials for today's meeting, you'll find a copy of the Commission's tribal consultation policy and the agenda and summary from last year's annual. Sorry, folks. Today's meeting represents roughly a midpoint between the 2022 and 2023 annual meetings. The 2023 annual meeting will take place in July of next year. As Chair Hassler-Carmen stated, the purpose of these meetings is identified in the Commission's tribal consultation policy to create a means by which tribes and the Commission can effectively work together to realize sustainably managed natural resources of mutual interest. That includes provisions for communication, collaboration, and record keeping and training. Among the high points from last year's meeting are tribes were interested in a process to update the Commission's tribal consultation policy itself and explore updating the Commission's co-management vision and definition to ensure consistency with related policy initiatives of the California Natural Resources Agency and the Governor's Office. And now there's also related federal guidance. The process of updating both of these is closely linked to broader efforts to address tribal consultation and co-management at the CNRA level. Assistant Secretary Thompson has been working on these issues with a number of agencies. And just a note on updating policies. Since the last annual tribal planning meeting, the Commission has expressed interest in reviewing and updating other policies that may be of interest to tribes, notably the policy for naming state installations. Included in this policy is naming marine protected areas. There has been some interest expressed by tribal communities in updating this policy to better reflect the rights and priorities of California tribes. So stay tuned for future updates on that discussion. A couple of other high points that came out of last year's meeting referred to training and education pertaining to tribal rights to resources and appropriate gathering practices. That would be very much an internal facing between the department and the commission. Externally, training for tribal citizens and tribal governments on jurisdictional issues and code compliance. Progress in these areas still remains very much in the planning stages. The commission relies on our relationship with the Department of Fish and Wildlife to implement most training. But on that note, the department recently appointed Deputy Director for Justice, Equity, and Diversity and Inclusion, Nicole Cropper, who was introduced at our August meeting in Lolita. Nicole recently announced the creation of a new capacity at the department, a high-level full-time tribal liaison. The search is still open for that position, but it does close on Thursday of this week. So if any tribes in attendance know of a qualified candidate for that position, there's still a little time to apply. We anticipate that these new capacities at the department, their ability to work more closely with tribes on a wide range of issues and agreements of interest will be greatly enhanced, as will their ability to coordinate with the commission in areas of mutual interest, such as both external and internal training related to tribal affairs. And lastly, and probably the issue that we made most substantive progress on last year's meeting was the addressing tribal subsistence harvest in the context of state code and regulation. Based on the guidance from tribes at the annual meeting and the recommendation of this committee, the commission did sanction the formation of an informal work group seeking to develop a definition for tribal subsistence. And I will provide a more detailed update on that work later in this meeting. And with that, I will turn it back over to Chair Hassler-Carmison.
Thank you, Chuck, very much. You know, I'm really pleased with the conversation that happened at that July 20th, 22 annual tribal planning meeting. You know, taking a look at the tribal consultation policy and consultation process, I think, is extremely important. And when we developed the consultation policy, it was a one-page, very brief document that really facilitated just that coordination, collaboration, and communication. And then also pointed to the department's consultation policy. And I think, you know, there has been discussion of we need to revisit that consultation policy and put some effort and some work into updating that and bringing more detail. And that's something that I think that is super important and a high priority. I think there was discussions of overharvest and the department enforcement in and around marine protected areas. And you know, Chuck just alluded to that education and training that's necessary to pertaining to tribal rights and resources. So that was definitely a great discussion and topic, and something that I think Chief Best has already responded to. Another tribal rep suggested that it's time to update our co-management vision and definition. And I think, you know, those are living definitions and vision. I think we're open to discussing that. However, as Chuck mentioned, we're really focusing, we have focused this year and will next year on defining the subsistence and harvest. So that recommendation was definitely another priority and one that we listened to. Also, a representative from the Karuk tribe described the complexity of issues facing tribes in Samanoids and the Klamath River in the context of looming dam removal and recent federal court decisions affecting tribal sovereignty. And a big congratulations to the Yurok tribe and the Karuk tribe in moving forward with that dam removal. It's historic. And Secretary Deb Haaland traveled to the area, as well as Congressman Huffman, together with the chairs of the Karuk and the Yurok tribes. So big congratulations to Chairman Buster and Chairman James on those accomplishments. Representatives from Grayton, Kushaya, and Rezagini spoke about the need for support for tribal resource management programs and looking for funding in order to co-manage, in order to stand up resource departments. There has to be funding that will support those efforts. So I think overall it was a great meeting. And I would love to hear from others on their perspective. And let's go ahead and invite tribal representatives who attended the annual tribal planning meeting to provide their perspectives. And we want to start thinking about next year and what issues tribes would like to see addressed by the committee and the commission. Any comments on the annual tribal planning meeting from this year?
For those of you who would like to participate in the discussion, now's the time to raise your hand, either in person or using the Zoom raise hand button, or participating by phone, pressing *9 once. If you've muted your phone, you may need to unmute yourself. Not too many hands in the room or online yet. And again, folks, this is the opportunity to inform the business of the tribal committee and the work of the commission and the issues that we take up through these committees. The annual tribal planning meeting is for tribes only. It's not a public meeting. And so it's really important that we are able to populate that agenda with the priority issues of tribes themselves. And so if not now, you're certainly able to get a hold of myself or Chair Hostler-Carmison or our Executive Director, Melissa Miller-Henson, to suggest agenda items for that meeting in July. But we will have other opportunities between now and then to put that agenda together.
Thank you, Chuck. I would like to invite Commissioner Zavaleta or Vice President Zavaleta to share any comments she might have regarding that annual Tribal Planning Committee meeting. Any thoughts or observations?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Hostler-Carmison. Unfortunately, this year, because of our family's COVID episode, I wasn't able to participate, and I would have really liked to. So I think I have questions, but my sense is that the questions I have are about issues that are later on the agenda, about co-management, about subsistence. And so if it's okay with you, I'm going to hold them because I'd like to hear first from participants in today's meeting on those items, because I think some of those questions might get answered. But I think I want to underscore how valuable I think it has been to have those conversations available in this hybrid format. I know that this year, for a variety of reasons, we went to online only. And I look forward to working with you, and I want to offer my support in hosting our next consultation in a hybrid format so that we can both have the value of being together in a room to sit with and discuss these really important topics, and then also have the ease of participation that the Zoom option allows. I just want to underscore also what you said about funding. That continues to be an issue that that comes up in conversations that I have with tribal partners as well, and in other fora. And I think that there are a lot of opportunities right now. There are a lot of opportunities right now to make progress on all of this, all of the issues that came up in the consultation conversation. But we're also hearing that our tribal partners are overtaxed by requests to participate in consultations with lots of different agencies, and potentially also interested in working more closely together, for instance, entering into co-management agreements, but also, just as you said, needing the funding support to be able to do that. So I want to underscore that as a priority, and it doesn't mean that on the commission we have any direct pathways to enable that, but it means that we can continue to be in conversation about it with other agencies and partners. And again, just want to thank you for your leadership in having such good turnout at that consultation.
Thank you, Vice President. I really look at our team, our commission team, our staff teams as very robust. And while there's a lot of work to be done, and we realize that, I think the great thing for me personally is the sincerity and the genuineness of the desire to really help and to really make a difference and to find ways to solve problems and to support the tribes in their efforts. So really appreciate your participation, excuse me. Well, let's go ahead. Are there any other comments from any tribal reps that you would like to share perspectives on that annual tribal planning meeting before we move to item 3?
We do have one hand up from Fred Briones.
Hi, thank you, Chuck. Yes, one thing that was gaining our interest is marine plastics and how to mitigate and also create revenue streams in terms of with tribes and protecting our food systems and creating these policies, adopting code, adopting resolution to promote tribal sovereignty, so that when these microplastics that are out in the ocean wash up on shores overnight and completely destroy the food system, penalties and fines, tribes can issue them to these plastic producers. And it's right now moving, the Attorney General of California is subpoenaing the plastic manufacturers because they don't have those waste streams or recycling capabilities. But the ocean plastic pollution, to protect our food system, to implement fines for economic development for tribal communities and their sovereignty rights, it's something that we're trying to, how should I say, tell the tribes. Because right now our beaches in California, especially Northern California up by Fort Bragg, I know our area is so clean. There's no plastic pollution. But then other areas there is. So then to implement fines, that system to be set up before the plastic comes, hopefully we could, I would like to promote those ways for tribes going forward to protect their food system. That is my comment.
Thank you very much, Fred. Definitely a very important topic, and it would be a great discussion.
We have no other hands online or in the room, Chair.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Let's go ahead and move to item number 3, co-management roundtable discussion.
And
No,
Correct.
yes.
Carmison, if I could for just a moment, I wanted to just let you know that Deputy Director Nicole Cropper from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, she's the Deputy Director for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Division at the department. She has joined us and she's in the audience here in San Diego.
Wonderful. Welcome, Deputy Director Nicole. Thank you for joining. Would you like to introduce yourself and say anything before we move on?
I just talk and when you
get
to
the table.
I mean, I'm doing that. Can you guys hear me okay?
Just use your outside voice.
Wonderful, thank you.
The
Sorry,
mic
I'm
is
really
over
curious
here.
to be an observer, so thank you for the chance to say something. Yeah, I'm Nicole Cropper, the Deputy Director for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. I wanted to come today specifically because we are getting a statewide tribal liaison. And so that person will be housed underneath my office. And so I wanted to, one, announce that for the group here, and then also just kind of get an idea of the discussions that are happening and planning for the year. So thank you for having me. I'm just going to be kind of a fly on the wall today. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for joining. So we'll move to the co-management roundtable discussion. And as you all know, we have definitely made progress in this area. And we are extremely pleased that we have some tribal representatives here today to share the effort between the commission and the department with tribes in creating these co-management opportunities and agreements. It's extremely wonderful. We're just so pleased to see these things moving forward. It's been a labor of love. We worked on it for a number of years, and we truly appreciate our partners, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, who have to do the heavy lifting on this. But the work with tribes is so rewarding, and having the opportunities to enhance marine stewardship, the wildlife resource stewardship, all of the things that are happening, we're just extremely pleased. I'd like to ask Chuck to provide a review of the co-management definition and vision statement for those of you that might not be familiar with it.
Yeah, in the meeting materials for this meeting, Exhibit 3.1, you will find the let's see, sorry, I'm just organizing myself here. There we go. The co-management vision and definition that the commission adopted in February of 2020. The vision statement reads: the vision of tribes, the California Fish and Game Commission, and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife is to engage in a collaborative effort between sovereigns to jointly achieve and implement mutually agreed upon and compatible governance and management activities to ensure the health and sustainable use of fish and wildlife. The definition itself reads: a collaborative effort established through an agreement in which two or more sovereigns mutually negotiate, define, and allocate amongst themselves the sharing of management functions and responsibilities for a given territory, area, or set of natural resources. And at the tribal committee meetings, at the annual tribal planning meetings, and at some commission meetings, we make an effort to highlight both the areas that need improvement, need expansion, and success stories. And today we have with us two examples of some pretty amazing success stories, one from Southern California, one from Northern California. At this point now, I would like to introduce Miguel Luna, who introduced himself a little bit earlier. He's the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Fernandino-Tatavian Band of Mission Indians. And he has some slides and a presentation for us to talk about the tribe's new Tribal Conservation Corps in partnership with the California Natural Resources Agency and the California Conservation Corps. and other tribal projects that he has going on. And are you able to share your screen, Miguel?
Yes, good afternoon. I believe I am. I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. And I'm imagining you all can hear me well since nobody's saying the famous words, you're on mute.
We can see the slides and hear you fine.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Madam Chair, for having me, and thank you, Tribal Advisor and Liaison Chuck Striplin, for the invitation. My name is Miguel Luna, and I work for the Fernandeño Tatavian Band of Mission Indians, and I have the honor to serve as the Tribal Historic and Cultural Preservation Department Director at the tribe. The tribe is a native sovereign nation of northern Los Angeles County, and we're composed of a coalition of lineages originating in the Santa Clarita, Simi San Fernando, and Antelope Valleys. And the territory expands a little under 2,500 square miles, and it's based on the recruitment of the recruitment area of the Mission of San Fernando in connection with the 4 diverse but very interconnected ethno-linguistic regions of the geographical area. And here is the region map before you. As I get into the conversation, why I was invited, and I'll be brief, it's important to note that the tribe, while not federally recognized, has been working over the past 50 years to really strive towards making sure that its citizens and the surrounding community are part of what is very much needed, which is education, attention towards, and the continued sovereignty. We have a Puku Cultural Community Services that's been around for 50 plus years now. That's a nonprofit. We have a for-profit that deals with environmental solar panel and electrical vehicle charging, Native First Lending, that looks at microloans. We have acknowledgement that it's a new initiative that we're looking for folks to voluntarily pay rent on lands that don't belong to them. And then I'll get into the discussion today. So it's important to put into context that we have a land conservancy, and we've done that because while back in memoriam, we had over a million, almost 2 million acres of land during the 1800s, and during the land grants, we ended up with 1,800, and today we have 0 that are owned by the tribe. We do co-manage a couple of properties with the city of San Fernando, which is a park, a local park that bears the name of our past tribal president, Rudy Ortega Sr. But we want to go beyond co-management. We really want to ensure that there's a transition from co-management into ownership. And we are projected to take over about 192 acres of land that will be in ownership of the tribe in the coming year. And this has been work that has been happening at least for the last 4 years, one through a mitigation project, development project, and the other one through a willing seller. And we're developing the grants now to buy that property. Each of the 2 properties, each property is about a little over 90 acres. Another example is we have a cultural center in partnership with the Forest Service. So we're also doing this at the national level with the Forest Service, where we have a cultural center, and that serves as an educational place and as a gathering place, not just for our tribe, but for our neighboring tribes as well. The Tiwaka'ai Tribal Conservation Corps was something that we launched earlier in the year. We felt that in order to sustain the land that we are going to be taking over, we needed a workforce that would be at par with maintaining it. So we've launched it earlier in the year, as Chuck mentioned, side by side with natural resources. Agency Secretary Wade Crowfoot, with his support, Department of Conservation, and with funding directly from the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, who has decided to invest to ensure that that workforce is developed. And really our vision is to, similar to other conservation corps, is to restore the land, but with intentionality also restore the history of the land that we're seeking to restore. And we want to do it through traditional ecological knowledge. We want to teach, and at the same time, we want to learn. We know that the Forest Service has great training. We partner with the California Conservation Corps because we know they have the training as well. But we want to ensure that we do this the right way with long-term and with our history, with the tribe's history and the First People's history attached to restoration. So we're very excited about being able to do these projects. Something that the Vice President mentioned that I think we're very in tune with what we're thinking, and certainly for your consideration, is that resources have to be at par with the enthusiasm that there is towards in co-management. Consultation was brought up, and it is something that, when Governor Brown decided to do the executive order to ensure that there were tribal liaisons, which has been very helpful and very welcome. What was amiss were the resources for the tribes to be able to respond to all the requests. And that's why it's not a criticism. This is for all of us to consider that, resources be made long-term and at par with that enthusiasm, because it put tribes in a place where, how do we respond to all these requests that are coming? We're working through that. We're very fortunate that we've been able to staff up at the tribe. We pursued grants to actually create toolkits that help us be better stewards of the funding mechanisms that are out there. We know that there's a lot of money out there related to climate change. We just have to be better at knowing how to access it. And we want to rise together, and we want to develop those toolkits so that we make ourselves available to others that are also seeking to go after those funding. So, this was just a teaser, and certainly appreciate the platform for us to come and let you know what we've been working on, and the excitement that we have for what's in the coming years. We're in the process of our federal recognition as well, and that's been a lengthy process. Those of you have gone through it, but we're excited. We have an administration that's very supportive of the things that we're working on, and I'm talking at the national and at the local level here, and certainly applaud all the efforts of your commission for engaging intentionally and thoughtfully in these processes. We've been in conversations with state parks. We're actually having a meeting at the end of this week on the co-management that allows us to develop the mechanisms to allow with our tribal ID to be able to come in and harvest the necessary materials for our cultural practices without being harassed. But not just, it goes beyond just stopping what typically happens, but what can we build on? And so State Parks has been a great partner in this as well. And we're following the example that was announced earlier in the year as well with the Yurok tribe, what they're also looking at co-management. So again, long-term funding and resources are needed, and the willingness to, I know there's a lack of trust, but we can only build on it if we're willingness to have relationships. And so thank you so much for allowing this relationship to be here. And I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Chuck.
Thank you, Miguel. Very inspiring work. I definitely would love to hear more and delve further into your projects. It looks like you've been extremely successful. And I know that comes with a lot of hard work and effort. And I can't agree with you more on everything that you've said, planting those seeds for other tribes. You're leading the way. So great job on that. And thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, I would like to introduce Buffy McQuillan. She is the TIPO for the Grayton tribe. And Buffy, we're ready for your presentation.
Sure, it's just me yapping today. Thank you. I don't have a formal presentation. Just wanted to share some of our good work that we're doing at Grayton Rancheria. We actually have a couple of interesting dynamic agreements, one with the National Park Service, with Point Reyes National Seashore. We entered into a general agreement for co-stewardship. As many of you know, the feds, most of the federal system doesn't acknowledge co-management by definition. They do now recently, they're pushing out a lot of new memos and policy work around co-stewardship in different buckets that tribes can take on and assume various responsibilities. So for us at Grayton Rancheria, we have focused on taking a more active role in decision-making out at Point Reyes with respect to heritage protection, identification and management, and traditional knowledge of cultural keystone species, and along with fire protection and natural resource work and cultural education, interpretive work with the seashore. So pretty robust general agreement for Grayton Rancheria. This is really significant. The tribe is a restored tribe. Came back through restoration in the year 2000. So they've achieved a lot in a little over 20 years of being restored, and went through an arduous federal process, and in the end was able to successfully be reinstated. The other agreement we just recently completed, it took for me a little over 7 years, for the tribe a little more than 15 years, and that's with Sonoma County Regional Parks. We entered into a co-management stewardship agreement with the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors for Tule Lake, which is a sacred site for the tribe. The tribe is comprised of Southern Pomo descendants and Coast Miwok. Grayton is the only federally recognized tribe for those direct lineal descendants of Coast Miwok heritage, and then one of many Southern Pomo culturally affiliated descendants. A lot of our work is focused on heritage protection and sacred sites. Grayton Rancheria, prior to restoration, has been actively engaged in protecting tribal ancestors for well over 30-40 years, most of it being around CEQA work, and then eventually repatriation through NAGPRA on federal lands, primarily as lineal descendants, and then now as a federally recognized tribe. So the work that we're doing at Tule Lake is really focused on cultural education, the stewardship of the traditional lake, and all of the surrounding landscape. So we started co-management roughly 2 years ago with an interim agreement. So we really took baby steps, and which ended up being really fruitful, because we took the time to work with the parks on a master plan and the EIR, and that document really represented what we envisioned as eventually arriving at co-stewardship. And that process, while it was a little bit painful and subject to a lot of public scrutiny, in the end, we found a lot of support by the public. They largely actually were really excited to see the tribe regain more of a sense of control without having to actually assume a lot of the risk and liability of land ownership. And so that, for the tribe is actually where a good place to land. Eventually, we see a build out of a visitor center. The master plan represents things that we felt were culturally appropriate and consistent with the land use. So for most parks, they can be designated, multi-type, passive. They can be, really active recreational parks. For Tole, it was really important for it to be maintained as a passive park, which means, ultimately, you don't see soccer fields, you don't see playgrounds and things of the like. You see things that really are going to harness and maintain the integrity of the cultural landscape. And so those things really worked for us as we dove into those heavy conversations, and getting folks to really, I think, come to an agreement. So this all really kind of segues nicely, I think, into Governor Newsom's and Secretary Snyder work on bringing tribal governments at the forefront of stewardship and management. And so we obviously leveraged that and harnessed it to the best that we could and continue to do so. We, in the next 6 months, will do a prescribed fire out at Tole Lake, which hasn't happened for well over 100 years. So we have already been doing co-management, but it seems to be getting more and more with a lot more local support and a lot more state support. CAL FIRE just recently, we're in the final phases of creating a VMP for Tole. So, it's a little over 3,400 acres. So we'll be able to set fire to about 80 acres initially, and eventually work our way through the park in some of the more areas that will need fire more than anything else. We use different types of grazing techniques. We use cattle. We also use sheep. And then some areas we obviously have to tend in a more concentrated manner with careful techniques. So that's a little bit about what we're doing. We're quite busy, as you know. Everybody really is interested in what it takes to be a co-manager. I always say careful what you wish for, because we are certainly doing it, and we are having to really build out our capacity at a faster rate than we expected. And thankfully the tribe is able to support this endeavor, and also support the park. So that is one thing that is a challenge. And I think I raised this at the last tribal committee meeting. Tribes, in order to do this, for us, it is a really significant amount of money that it takes to have staff do this work, to have the legal team to develop out these agreements. And so, well, I applaud the state for doing the right thing. This is an important step, but it also is one that is costly and expensive. And so, in order for tribes to be successful, it will take more than grants. As a TIPO, we have a very small grant that's made available from the National Park Service, and it in no way can assume the real cost of historic preservation, protection, and sacred site protection. So, I always encourage everybody, we can to think about that big picture and long-term sustainability. Co-management is amazing. It is definitely worthwhile to reassume this connection to place, but it is very costly. So, we're looking forward to expanding out into other parks. With state parks, we're also in conversation with them. And again, that will increase the demand on my office. And, we'll be looking in 2023 for a lot more staff. So thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Buffy, very much. It's so exciting, the work that you're doing as well. And my apologies to Miguel. I forgot to ask if anyone had questions on Miguel's presentation. So either Buffy or Miguel, if you have questions for them, please go ahead and raise your hand.
Looks like Chairman Atterbury has a question.
Yes, can you hear me?
Mhm.
Yes, thank you for those presentations. So Buster Atterbury, Clerk Chairman, and just a couple comments. The consultation process, I want to say the Karuk tribe was one of the first tribes to write a consultation process. Buffy, you're correct, they went a little wild with the consultations. I know our self-governance officer at one time, we emailed and said we just don't jump right into things. We need time to review them. So they are good, and the co-management part of it is also very good. And from the White House Summit, the briefing that we got from the White House Summit was they wanted to take everything a little step further. It says co-stewardship of federal lands and waters. And then there's another section on indigenous knowledge. So inclusion, that has to be there when we're talking about co-management. And then consent when they're all done with the meeting, that all stakeholders are consent on how to move forward. And the funding to do that, at TBEC, I brought it up. If this might need a new sort of natural resources line item or something where funding can be had. I think all the tribes face the same issue, capacity. I'm not sure what the solution is there. Can we partner with other tribes to help lessen the burden? Can we partner with federal employees? I think capacity is it's not just me or you. It's a lot of places. So how do we? So we need that discussion. I think what was left out before was the tribal ecological knowledge part of managing these lands. So that's what needs to be implemented as we move forward with co-management. So what we need to define is what's that going to look like? Where's the funding come from? Are we going to have to build some new facilities? Are we going to combine the facilities, our fisheries programs, our fire crews, our checks program? Do we invite them to join our facilities, or vice versa? Or is there new ones? I think in some cases they're going to have to be some new buildings. We're talking about combining modern science with tribal ecological knowledge. And in order to do that, we're going to need state-of-the-art facilities for these fires and for the emergency preparedness that the tribes have to do. So yeah, my 2 cents that we're, the White House cabinet is recognizing the contributions of Native Americans, in particular from their indigenous knowledge, and I'd say generational knowledge that's been passed down from generation to generation. There's plenty of that out there. So as you move forward with your committees, I would recommend getting as much travel input as you can from the experts that we have. So, Jackie, I apologize. I have another meeting at 2:30. That's why I wanted to kind of jump in the middle here and thank everybody for all your hard work. I think we're all on the same page that co-management is very important, and it's going to vary from tribe to tribe. But the bottom line is we need inclusion of our tribal ecological knowledge and knowledge of observation. So thank you for your
Chairman,
time.
thank you so much, Chairman Atterbury. And I know you have to go. So I think he's gone. I just was going to say, if you had any thoughts real briefly on tribal subsistence harvest before you leave us our next item, it'd be really great for you to say a few words on that.
You're muted, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry about that. I forgot about that. Yeah, subsistence harvest. Obviously, probably the big thing there is the dam removal, and Madam Chair, you already talked about that a little bit. So that's a huge step in getting some of our food source back. But I know the Kuruk tribe has one in Orleans. It's a community garden, and we're looking to do that in Happy Camp and Wairika. You know, we need to figure out ways to feed our people. Even in my lifetime, so I go back to when I was a kid, plenty of apples and pears and strawberries and all kinds of things that grew in your garden. You don't see that quite as much anymore. But we want to make sure we can offer to our elders at the very least. Those are some food sources. Substance activities, commercial and recreational. Sounds like that's a work in progress. Is that fair to say, Jackie? But I guess I can just say, you know, how important it is. I know our elders still know, but you know, we've kind of lost touch a little bit with some of our younger generations in what took place in having your own food substance. It's you know, for me, it was a kind of a rite of passage to go catch the salmon, to clean them, to take them to our elders, to put them on our dinner table. And the kids don't have that opportunity right now. And you know, even the regulations of trout fishing, lake fishing, fishing in the river, were ways that the young people could gather food and bring home, and it was a culture. It was more of having that good feeling of doing something good for your family, bringing food home. So yeah, as I said with the dam removal, we're bringing home more than the salmon. We're bringing home an entire way of life. So Very important. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Atterbury. We really appreciate your participation and your time today and sharing all of the wonderful work that the Karuk tribe is doing. Thank you. Any questions for Miguel or Buffy on co-management?
If I could just add a couple of things just off from what Chairman Atterbury mentioned. He brought up the work that Karuk has done in developing out a tribal consultation policy. And I think they've also done some other work around intellectual property and cultural burning. I think those are really critical steps for tribes to take, which is to really frame out their own policies and really take really that stance of this is ours and this is the process that we're going to use, and then people sort of arrive at the door ready and prepared, and the expectations are clear, because with respect to some of the pieces we're getting from the federal system, is, you know, everybody go do this with tribes, but there really is no set process for tribes to be prepared to really engage or accept that new relationship. And so, you know, it's really upon us to do that work, which is a heavy lift, for us to really set out those policies and to think that through how that's going to work. But it is worthwhile, and they do have a lot of models out there that we can use and we have used. But I think, you know, one area that we are challenged by is the protection of that tribal knowledge, whether it's called indigenous knowledge, TEK. I like to refer to it as tribal knowledge. You know, I'm not an official Western scientist, you know, but I, you know, feel like I pack some tribal knowledge and cultural knowledge to the table. And try to impart that in the work that I do. And I certainly don't want somebody to take that information and then co-opt it and go use it somewhere else and reapply it. So it is a challenge for us to maintain that. And I think the offering of the feds is, well, don't give it to us, but by policy, they're saying, but you should give it to us. And so it's a little bit of a, baffling takeaway right now, because we are tasked with being, you know, the keepers of the knowledge, but we're also tasked with, I think, a bigger responsibility, which is safeguarding it. And what are the tools in which we, you know, do we have to really do that? Some of that really will rest on the state and the federal systems to help us, and it can't just be, well, don't give it to us, so therefore, you know, we don't have to keep it into our systems and maintain it, because, you know, I keep pointing out to folks, you know, the Public Records Act is alive and well, and there are requirements. The Freedom of Information Act is, you know, fully exercised by folks who want tribal knowledge. They want to understand the world in which we operate of tribal consultation, even though much of that might be protected. So, you know, I gave this lecture today to California TIPOs this morning about making sure that, you know, when we have these conversations with our agency partners, that they understand the limitations of FOIA and PRA requests, and that we're working in partnership to make sure that we're protecting, you know, any of our tribal citizens who come to the table and share that information. You know, we can't make people not give up their traditional knowledge because they feel like, you know, somebody needs to hear it and document it. But at the same time, as a tribal government, it still is our responsibility. Many of us have constitutional responsibilities to protect this information. And so, you know, that continues to be one of our challenges, probably our biggest challenge in co-management is finding ways to make sure that we are protecting that tribal knowledge. You know, we will continue to press on this issue with our state and federal partners until we find, I think, a really good solution. I see Sam coming online, and I can always rely on Sam Cohen. So
He's always there when you
share
need
your
him.
wisdom, Sam.
Sam, do you have a comment on co-management you'd like to share or a question?
Well, of course, I'm the chair of the Buffy McQuillan fan club, so I'm proud to be here. However, I do want to ask Buffy if she's at liberty to share the agreement they inked with state parks, because that is probably the finest co-management agreement I've seen to date. And much of this sector is undefined. I mean, the beauty of being able to define your own co-management is also the difficulty, because everyone's starting from zero. So I have a copy of the grading agreement with state parks, but maybe not everyone has access to that agreement.
We haven't finalized the state park one. We have the federal one, Sam, which I think is what you have. It's the general agreement with the seashore.
That's what
And yeah, so I think I have a staff person on. He can find those. Those are public documents, and intentionally have no sensitive information in them, so that we can share it. And I know some tribes have not. They've shared redacted. Again, I encourage folks, if these are teachable moments, let's create agreements that you don't have to redact. And so, yeah, I'm happy to share those. We'll pull those out. The Tole Lake one, which is a regional park. Again, many of us have regional parks that are sacred sites. So, while it seems like very low hanging to partner with a regional local park, it actually has been one of the most fruitful endeavors the tribe has done, because you get to create your own rules. Nobody sat at the table saying absolutely not. The Board of Supervisors here in Sonoma County were 100%, and we've gone through different supervisors who every single one of them emphatically were like, this is absolutely the right thing to do. And handed us that partnership with a lot of excitement, and I don't think just support politically. They literally, from the bottoms of their heart, were like, this is absolutely the right thing to do. So yeah, we'll share those, and we may just send them to Chuck and have him share them. So yeah, definitely.
Hi, this is Fred. I just wanted to share some information to the group that my tribe, Big Valley, we're in the MOU process with the state, and the person to talk to is Sabine, who works from the state. She was also able to help us in our NAGPRA, and there's also granting and funding opportunities that our tribe received through the California Tribal Fund to hire somebody throughout the MOU process and do other work for our TIPO with Ron Montez. And also me, Fred, as the CEO of the Native American Fiber Program, our nonprofit is able to support tribes with their NAGPRA, such as their travel to go and repatriate. So there's several resources. And at Big Valley, we hope to be the tribe that other tribes can see, and they could share information like it has always been at our roundhouse, where they would come and receive knowledge, and we would share because we would know they would go out to create good. So having those models and those experiences, a lot has taken place at our tribe, and we'd like to work with others. So that is my comment. Good work to you, Buffy. And my cousin, Melissa Elgin, is on the council. I'm related to, that's my cousin. So good work. Thank you for helping our family.
Hi, this is Ruthie Maloney. I'm Yurok and Navajo. I'm with the North Coast Native Protectors, who is starting a tribal marine collaborative. And I wanted to thank Fred, and because he's our new board member, also on our board, on our North Coast Native Protectors. But also I'd like to thank all, like Buffy, I really appreciate all your projects that you're describing, and also Miguel. It's awesome to see all these tribal co-management projects that are going on. And also I just wanted to let the group know about the Tribal Marine Collaborative, who is a statewide group of tribal members, tribal governments, tribal interests of people. We're really looking for the people who are boots on the ground that are gathering, and our tribal practitioners. And so I just want to say that that is what Buffy had mentioned is of huge concern, the ownership of traditional ecological knowledge. That is something that is very concerning to tribes, and which makes them hesitant to be part of a state initiative and being part of the MPA collaboratives, or even within the decadal management review. But I really appreciate the groups that are starting to form. There's also more funding. You know, that is a limitation of the state, like OPC funding and issues that we have, is the ownership of our knowledge. So I think, you know, there's other funding that is out there, like Fred was mentioning, and by having a statewide group, I think you're also going to have a statewide consensus of things that we can be working on as a group of California tribal people. So we're looking forward to being more participant at the Fish and Game Commission level and at other negotiations that include tribal, cultural, ancestral territories. And so I just want to say thank you, though, because it's really starting to put the pieces together. And I think that really is starting to make knowledge is powerful, and tribes are doing work that is just not quite, maybe not be understood or shared at this statewide level. So I really appreciate, again, Jackie Hostler and the Fish and Game Commission to allow this tribal fish and game platform, so that we can have a voice prior to, like, tomorrow's meeting. You have, you know, that just really does offer so much. You're including us before even conversations of tomorrow with the state officials. So I really appreciate that. Walk wow.
You're muted, Jackie.
Great, and I'll say what I just said again with my microphone on. Thank you, Ruthie, so much for those comments, and just huge thank yous to Miguel and Buffy for sharing those amazing projects and the details. Really, really excellent work. Any other comments before we move on, or questions?
Yeah, Chair Hostler-Carmison, if I may, I had a couple of questions and a couple of comments as well. Those are both just excellent presentations, and that was an excellent conversation that followed. So I appreciate all of the contributions that everyone just made to this conversation. And so there are a whole bunch of things I have on this list of things that I want to make sure to amplify. Just a couple of those. I really want to appreciate the emphasis of these co-management and co-stewardship agreements on shared goals and tribal goals, and not just, like, for what was just being discussed, the use of tribal expertise and knowledge to achieve non-tribal goals. I think that's a really important thing to surface and talk about because I see that coming up sometimes, and I don't think it's out of malice necessarily, but sometimes out of a misunderstanding of the goals of co-management by non-tribal partners, you know, in some settings. So I appreciate that emphasis, and both of our speakers today enumerated what some of those goals are and sort of what the path is. I think it's also really interesting as I listen to these examples, not just today, but also in previous meetings, to hear about the relationships between these local specifics and these local agreements like the one at Tulare Lake, the relationships between those, which are really important because they're place-based and they reflect the specifics of the place and the needs, with broader sort of maturing of policies and maturing of guidance from the agencies that tribes are partnering with. So that's something else that I just would invite further conversation about down the line, like how to have the specifics inform continual refinement for progress on the broader level. Chairman Atterbury talked about both funding, which we sort of discussed, and it's come up a number of times today, but he also talked about capacity. So I have a question on that one for anyone, and that is whether on that capacity side and other conversations that we've had, you know, there's a real interest in developing internal capacity within tribal communities to complement the use of consultants, the use of partners. And I wonder whether there's a role for the state, for education department, the CSU system, the UC system, to have a role in supporting the capacity building within tribes that needs to take place for natural resource management, for co-management, wildlife stewardship to happen by tribal members. And so I'd love to hear from folks about that question. And the last thing I want to highlight is really interesting conversation about intellectual property and data sovereignty, which I really appreciate because I think there's a long history of harm that has occurred from research communities and from researchers taking indigenous knowledge, taking tribal knowledge. But I think also that more recently, there's some really good examples of strong data sovereignty agreements out there, not in the co-management space, but in the research space. And so I'd highlight that because I think, I mean, Buffy, your comments were spot on. Like that's so important for there to be some alternatives to, some concrete alternatives to don't share the knowledge or give it away. And I've been pleased to see just sort of the maturing of that data sovereignty agreement space in my academic capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, President Zavaleta. I'm having a technical issue. I'm going to need to log off and log back on. Can possibly, Chuck, can you go ahead and lead for me while I accomplish that?
Actually, it was just suggested that maybe we take a 10-minute break.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
To stretch their legs and get you on a more reliable computer.
Thank you so much. We'll see you all in 10 minutes.
So we will reconvene approximately, let's say 2:50. 10 minutes to 3.
Thank you.
Are you back with us, Jackie?
Good afternoon, everyone. We're about ready to resume. We'll be moving to item 4, tribal subsistence harvest definition and related management mechanisms. If everyone in San Diego is ready to resume.
We are.
I am.
Okay, should we dive into it? So thank you, Chair Hustler Carmison. Again, the work group met yesterday afternoon for about 2.5 hours here in San Diego via Zoom and in person with participants from about 7 tribes discussing 3 main agenda items. First, we had a discussion about the goal and structure of the work group itself. Then we evaluated some draft questions to help shape a white paper on the topic. And finally, we talked about the relationship between subsistence and co-management, looking both at existing agreements in California and in other jurisdictions, as well as ideas about how some agreements might be improved to reflect tribe sovereign rights to specific resources and areas. With respect to the goal, the attending tribal representatives reiterated and expanded on some of the concerns expressed at earlier meetings about the term subsistence and the notion of the state adopting a formal legal definition, emphasizing that subsistence doesn't capture many other cultural aspects of tribes' interactions with the environment, citing examples such as harvesting wildlife for regalia and ceremonial uses, as well as rights to harvest resources for other customary uses. In fact, the term quote, customary seemed to gain some traction as a more desirable way to describe these uses. And to refresh your memory, the Commission adopted the original goal, which can be found in both of the exhibits for this item, in sanctioning this work group to identify opportunities to develop in-state statute and or regulation an actionable definition of California Native American subsistence activities.
Chuck and Melissa, are we ready to resume the meeting?
Can
Can
anyone hear us?
Can anyone hear us?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
Loud and clear.
hear you. Yep.
Okay. So Jackie's having some audio issues.
Someone can hear me. They're all separate.
Okay, we'll deal with that separately, but I'll continue. Or,
Wait, hold on.
hang on, no, I won't. I need to restart. Sorry.
Yeah.
Our committee chair definitely needs to hear all this. Bear with us for a moment, folks.
No, that's right. Yes, I know. No, I'm not.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Can you
Hear us.
I can finally hear you.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I was for you to start.
I'm gonna just start over real quick. I didn't get very far. So the work group, the tribal subsistence definition work group met yesterday afternoon for about 2.5 hours here in San Diego and via Zoom with participants from about 7 tribes discussing 3 main agenda items. First, we had a discussion about the goal and structure of the work group itself. We then evaluated some draft questions to help shape a white paper on this topic. And finally, we talked about the relationship between subsistence and co-management, looking both at existing agreements in California and from other jurisdictions, as well as ideas about how some of these agreements might be improved to reflect tribe sovereign rights to specific resources and areas. With respect to the goal, the attending tribal representatives reiterated and expanded on some of their concerns expressed at earlier meetings about the term subsistence and the notion of the state adopting a formal legal definition. emphasizing that subsistence doesn't always capture many other cultural aspects of tribes' interactions with the environment, citing examples such as harvesting regalia for wildlife and other ceremonial uses, as well as rights to harvest resources for other customary uses. In fact, the term customary seemed to gain some traction as a more desirable way to describe these uses. And to refresh our memories, the commission adopted the original goal, which can be found in both of the exhibits for this item, in sanctioning this work group to identify opportunities to develop in-state statute and/or regulation an actionable definition of California Native American subsistence activities that's distinct from commercial or recreational. Tribal representatives attending the meeting yesterday expressed overall support for this discussion, but there seemed to be a general consensus that there may need to be, we need to further articulate the goal of this work, possibly to make it broader and more inclusive. We then moved to a discussion of the structure of the work group. This committee asked the work group to discuss several possible changes to how the work groups are being hosted, or the work group meetings are being hosted, specifically to bring the process into the context of these public tribal committee meetings, including opportunities for tribes to caucus separately before, during, or after the public meetings. Here again, after some lengthy discussion of the goal of this work group, and with about half of the tribal representatives expressing their thoughts on the idea, there was a general consensus that the current government-to-government framework should be maintained until more substantive progress has been made. And lastly, looking to the next work group meeting in April of next year in the Fresno-Bakersfield area, some of the resources provided for yesterday's meeting sparked some interest in a couple of guest speakers, practicing attorneys who have done some groundbreaking work in this area. With the committee's permission, I'd like to start reaching out to those individuals and assess their interest and availability. And with that, I turn it back to Chair Hustler Thomason, Vice President Zavaleta.
Thank you, Chuck. Just doing a sound check one more time. Am I coming across fine?
Yes. You're a little echoey though.
Yeah, I apologize for that. I have we've just remodeled in our office and I have a lot of space and I'm going to be a little bit echoey. Can you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think
Okay.
everyone's not.
I really appreciate that introduction, Chuck, and I just kind of want to share my heart today with all of the amazing and wonderful work that the ad hoc work group has done in 2022, and to also give a little bit more detail and explanation about my request as chair of the committee to move the work group back into the tribal committee as part of our bi-monthly meetings. And not bi-monthly, but how many meetings do we have, Chuck, in 2023? Is it 4 tribal committee meetings or 3?
There are 3 tribal committee meetings plus the annual tribal planning meeting.
Plus the annual tribal planning meeting, right? So I just want to begin by saying, you know, while we have made considerable progress in the last 10 years, I truly know it's the tip of the iceberg. And we have a lot of additional work to be done. And the work that the ad hoc committee is doing is just excellent. I think the missing piece for me is my inability to participate and listen and be part of those discussions, because in and on the Fish and Game Commission, if I attend a meeting, it becomes a public meeting. And legal explained that to me numerous times, because this committee and this work is near and dear to my heart. I feel like I'm at a loss by not being able to be in the room, hearing, you know, comments, reacting to those comments in person or virtually. And so I began discussions with Director Melissa Miller Hansen and Tribal Advisor Chuck to see if there was any possibility to bring the work group back into the tribal committee. I understand that makes it a public meeting. And I think that there's both pros and cons to doing that. So I was able to participate in the meeting in June, but not the meeting in August or the meeting yesterday. And one of my concerns, in addition to me not being able to participate, is I believe there could be a perception problem as we move forward if we are not discussing possibilities in public and in open session. I know one of the concerns is that the tribe do need the opportunity to talk amongst themselves. And my recommendation for that is, during co-management, we did the work within the tribal committee, and then the tribal representatives retired and had a tribal caucus for sometimes more than an hour. And that seemed to be extremely effective. I believe moving forward in 2023, it's important for me to be part of the process. I want to hear from tribal leaders, tribal representatives personally. And I think it could be extremely effective if we handle it properly. So I open up the floor to the tribal representatives, tribal leaders and representatives today. I want to hear from you. It's so important to have the tribes at the table first in all the planning, but I feel like it's important for me to be at the table as well. So thank you for allowing me to share my heart, and I welcome any comments or discussion.
Commissioner Hostler-Carmison, if I may, I guess I just want to make sure that I understand. It's hard because we're not able to participate in these meetings to understand the texture of the conversation that has led those who are participating in the work group to recommend that the government framework be sustained for longer. And I hesitate to sort of ask them to relitigate that for us, but I do feel like it's a concern of mine that we do something that goes against the recommendations of the tribal representatives at the center of this issue and this conversation. And I guess I feel like it's paramount that we honor that recommendation as much as I would also like to be able to participate in those conversations. I understand how valuable it would be, in particular, for you to be there. And I've expressed frustration before, like I think in our October meeting, at the limitations of getting a summary and a report back that sort of misses the texture of the conversation. So I wonder whether we couldn't ask our staff, because their staff are able to participate, who all can, be there to provide us with a more extensive summary of the conversation as a way to honor what the tribal representatives suggested and recommended to our staff yesterday, but provide a little bit more of an ability, especially for you, to understand the flow of the conversation and to be able to give input.
Clarifying question, Vice President Zavaleta. You're talking about the government to government framework that was initially decided upon with having the ad hoc committee continue through into 2023, if I'm understanding you correctly. And there was discussion about it yesterday. And I didn't hear all of Tribal Advisor Chuck's remarks on that, but I would like to hear remarks today, and I'm not trying to get anyone to relitigate. I want folks to feel comfortable. They know me, they know who I am, they know the purpose I have for what I do. And I would really like to hear from the tribal representatives that are willing to share their opinions today while we have this forum and ability to do so. And I'm open to hearing remarks in discussing that, having that roundtable discussion.
Chair
Commissioner
Hostler,
Hostler Carmison, can I?
yeah, I was just going to say, Buffy has her hand up, and then we do have at least 3 folks that were in the meeting yesterday, today's meeting.
I'm sorry, Chuck, I'm not hearing you correctly. I know Buffy has her hand up, but I didn't hear the rest.
And in addition to Buffy, we do have at least 3 other tribal representatives that were at yesterday's meeting here online.
That's great.
Go ahead, Buffy.
I just wanted to share my perspective. I do have to get to a consultation meeting. I wasn't able to join yesterday, and not because I didn't really have it on my calendar. One of the constraints that I have is with respect to participating in a subcommittee, and recognizing that that could result in a Public Records Act request for anything. So I receive information. I have a constraint in actually responding back to a state email and getting our emails caught up into that system. So I appreciate what you've said, Commissioner Hostler Carmison, because that is literally why it makes it hard for us to come to the table. One of the things that, and then also some of the other issues around, what is government to government consultation? What is it? Well, for us, I mean, like, I'm going to a tribal consultation. It's me as a designated representative going and meeting with a designated representative of a local agency. So, it's not just me meeting with a planner or a staff person, it's somebody who's designated to be a decision maker or take a decision maker to the top decision makers, which, for us, I appreciate working directly with the commissioners who can take this to the greater body as actionable steps forward. So, I definitely, appreciate why folks want to meet and just, meet as a subcommittee. But as soon as you involve staff members from the state, all things kind of fall apart at that point. In terms of preserving our confidentiality, I have met with my tribal colleagues on subsistence and appreciate all of those conversations along the way, and have been a part, I feel like, of the folks who are behind the white paper and thinking about these issues, because we at Grayton, my previous life working for UROC was in the throes of MLPA and advocated for tribal take and helped write some of those critical cultural pieces for the documentation that we ended up having to submit in order to get approval for tribal take. And thankfully that process is not as arduous as it was back then. But having been in the trenches, I appreciate the labor that's involved, but also would have been, if we'd had to bring all of that to the table, to the working table of the state system, and had all of our thoughts and cultural information, our elders exposed, I think, to a potential state system, because anything like this is going to be a little bit controversial. So I think we should find a way, a happier place. So, I can participate because I want to. and not potentially expose the tribe. So those are some of my thoughts. And I see Sam has his hand, so I want to hear the wisdom from Sam Cohen.
Go ahead.
I think there's 3 people ahead of me though in the tribal committee room that I believe who wanted to speak.
There's only one hand up.
Are there folks in the room?
Oh, okay. Well, the folks that were here yesterday do not have their hands up. But from Rezagini, from Talawa, from Yurok tribe, if any of you want to make your thoughts known on the discussion yesterday, you're more than welcome at this point. Go ahead, Sam.
Okay, very good. I mean, eventually this is going to have to be a public process, whether we like it or not. So I don't know. I honestly I have not been following the work group at all, and I'm kind of disappointed in myself. But I'd love to maybe re-engage with the work group. We've done a lot of cultural, beneficial, and subsistence work with the state water board and all the regional water boards, where those definitions exist at the state level but have to be individually, regionally implemented. So we're happy to volunteer our time and our services. I do think ultimately the working group has to report back to the tribal subcommittee. And if we need to get more robust reports, that certainly, certainly the staff can make that happen. And so I guess this is an important issue. It's an issue of statewide importance, and San Ynez Chumash volunteers.
Thank you, Sam. I see Cindy Smallwood from Hamul has her hand up.
Excuse me, yes, Chair Hostler Carmison, excuse me. My chairwoman, Erica Pinto, apologizes. She's in a tribal council meeting right now, but she wanted me to just let you know that that she is in favor of your request. So I just wanted to pass that on to you.
Thank you, Cindy. Have you been following the work group so far in the work that they've been doing?
Chairwoman Pinto has, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from tribal leaders or tribal representatives? I really want to hear from you.
In the room, we have a hand raised.
Hi, Chair Hostler Carmenson. So this is Crystal Moreno. I'm a representative from the Shingle Springs Band of Miwok Indians. Yesterday was actually my first meeting, my first time engaging with the work group. And although I don't want to speak for the colleagues in the room, I will say my own opinion is that each tribe, it seemed pretty unanimous that folks wanted to stay working within the work group and not come to the full tribal committee. And so, like I said, I can't speak for them, but I was there and that was the sense.
Okay, thank you.
This is Chairwoman Pipa from the Ipai Nation of San Isabel. And this is actually my first meeting, so I haven't really been following the group, but I've been asked to come and listen and support any way I can. So I guess I'll have to go through some of the information that was sent to me. And I know one thing, working with the groups that I work with, the KCRC and the KHPC here in San Diego, a lot of times when it comes to tribal knowledge or cultural knowledge, some of that is personal per band.
So some bands are willing to share it and some bands aren't. And, you know, I see, I don't know who the first woman that was speaking, but some of the information that she had stated, you know, like bringing the elders forth and putting them up to share the information, knowing that it's going to go out to everybody in the state of California. And some of that needs to be held back. So those are my thoughts on it. I'm in support of this group because of the fact that I'll be having more time to, you know, to pay attention to these issues. I have worked in cultural resources for about a good 25 plus years in San Diego. So, you know, it's interesting to see what's coming out of years and years of this work, and, you know, actually having officials with the state being involved. And, you know, too bad there's not more tribes here from San Diego, but I do see Hamolzon, and, you know, it was brought to my attention. So hopefully, with your next working group, we can get more people from San Diego to participate and be a part of what's happening here, because it's important that, you know, the information be shared throughout the state with all the bands. And some people have the staff and some people don't. And, you know, our band is one of them that, you know, we only have. So thank you, and I will keep in contact with you know, where the emails, hopefully, you know, other individuals who work in this on and help out also.
Thank you, Chairwoman, for your comments very much. Appreciate them. Anyone else? So I know there are other folks that had really hoped to be on the tribal committee call today, but were not able to do so. I believe this topic needs additional discussion, and I welcome any thoughts from our tribal advisor, Vice President Zavaleta, and or Melissa, our executive director.
I just want to thank everybody who just shared their perspectives on it. It's clear that there are like varying perspectives on it. And I think it's also, it's so clear to me that this is not a question around Commissioner Hostler-Carmenson, you specifically participating, but one around, and I think we all know this, but I want to give voice to it, right? It's around the public setting. So for those people who are concerned about exposure, who just spoke, and it reflected more on what the tone of the conversation was yesterday. I just want to make sure that again, that we're honoring the recommendation coming from the representatives who are participating in the conversation. And I wonder whether we could have more of a conversation about if that is the path forward that participants would like to sustain, how we might improve your ability, Commissioner Hostler-Carmenson, you in particular, to understand what's taking place in that setting.
Thank you, Vice President Zavaleta. Any other thoughts or comments?
Chair Hostler-Carmenson, this is Melissa Miller-Henson, your Executive Director. I think you know well that your staff will support whatever decision you make with regard to this issue, and we will do everything possible if you go down this pathway of continuing with the work group in its current form, we will do everything possible to make sure that you have the information that you need to keep abreast. And if you choose to go down the other pathway, well, then we will support you and the tribes in that regard as well. So your staff is here to support the work of the commission, the work of the tribal committee, and that work group.
I really appreciate that, Melissa, and I have very mixed emotions and beliefs on, because we went down the tribal committee path and we were able to discuss co-management. Tribes were able to leave in caucus, and then the tribes could decide what to report back. I'm probably a little bit more partial to that format because of the public participation, because of the transparency, because of the record can be set. And the tribes, I mean, even if tribes wanted several hours, we would try and accommodate that. And I have spoken to numerous representatives that agree with that position. And I'm also hearing the tribal representatives that don't. So I respect both opinions. And I'm not ready to make a recommendation at this point. One way or the other, perhaps we can have a more of a discussion with the full commission tomorrow.
So we move on to the next item, Chair Hostler-Carmison.
I'm looking for direction, I think, from Melissa's staff, and the report out from our meeting to the commission can convey this to the full commission, and perhaps there would be opportunity for other tribal leaders and representatives to make comment tomorrow that were not able to be here today.
So yes, absolutely. Tomorrow will be an opportunity for you to report out on the conversation, and of course your tribal advisory liaison, Chuck Strickland, will assist you with that, to report out on what was discussed today in the tribal committee and any recommendations coming out of the committee. And clearly, if there are other tribes who want to weigh in on elements of this conversation, they are absolutely welcome and able to do that tomorrow during this agenda item, the tribal committee agenda item.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, yes, Chuck, please, let's move to the next item.
Okay, we'll move on to our staff and agency updates. Traditionally, we've had updates from the California Natural Resources Agency, the California Ocean Protection Council, and our colleagues at the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Today, unfortunately, the representatives from the Ocean Protection Council were not able to join us. They are with Secretary Crowfoot up in Montreal at the COP 25, 26, 26, one of the COPs. So we will, and I think Assistant Secretary for Tribal Affairs, Geneva E.B. Thompson, was also not able to join us, sends her regrets, but she did send me some updates that I would like to provide you. The California Natural Resources Agency and the California Conservation Corps are concluding their early consultation period on the development of two new programs. One is the Tribal Nature-Based Solution Program, and the other is the Tribal Youth Nature-Based Solution Conservation Corps program. These ideas for the development of these two programs came out of our over 70 different tribal consultations and intertribal roundtable discussions in the development of the Natural and Working Lands Climate Smart Strategy and Pathways to 30 by 30 strategy. The goal of both programs is to fund tribal priorities in the nature-based solution space, including the purchase of ancestral lands, restoration projects, and workforce development. The Natural Resources Agency and the Conservation Corps anticipate having draft guidelines out for a second round of tribal consultations and regional workshops early next year. And if you have any questions on these programs, please feel free to reach out directly to Geneva at the Resources Agency. Her email is geneva.thompson@resources.ca.gov, and I'll put that email in the chat momentarily. Second, the California Natural Resources Agency has concluded its early consultation period for the development of the new Outdoors for All strategy. This strategy identifies barriers communities face in accessing public land and natural resources, and will provide a roadmap for the state to address these barriers. The Resources Agency anticipates having a draft Outdoors for All strategy for a second round of tribal consultation and public comment early next year. And again, if you have any questions on this, reach out to Geneva at CNRA. And lastly, CAL FIRE will be soliciting grant applications starting December 15th for the Tribal Wildfire Grant Program. This program will support tribal priorities in the forest health space, including cultural fire, restoration, and post-fire cleanup. There is a website, fire.ca.gov/grants/forest health. And I will also place that in the chat momentarily. Moving on to the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Assuming Chair Hassler-Carmenson, do you have any questions or comments on the update from CNRA?
No, I don't. Thank you, Chuck.
Vice President Zavaleta. And I will move over to the Department of Fish and Wildlife. We have with us in the room Sarah Fonseca, who's the Tribal Cultural Resources Specialist. And also joining us online are Chris Stutes, the Assistant Chief and Tribal Liaison for Law Enforcement Division, Fisheries Branch Chief Jay Rowan, and Becky Oda and Craig Schumann, Manager of the Marine Region, are with us as well. So let's get started with Chris Stutes, if you have anything.
Hello, thank you, Chuck. Hi, Commissioner Hassler-Carmenson and Vice President Zavaleta. Chris Stutes, Assistant Chief Law Enforcement Division, citizen of the Cherokee Nation, and acting, or not acting, but tribal liaison for enforcement and filling the void of the department's vacant tribal liaison role in a shared responsibility with Sarah Fonseca for the last year or so. But as the spoiler alert came out earlier from during the Native American Heritage Month, the department did fly a position for filling that vacancy that's been vacant for a little over a year now, and that'll be closing towards the end of this week. And hopefully with coming weeks, the department will have a statewide liaison again. As far as law enforcement division, I don't have anything specific to provide an update to. I just want to put a context to that, and that is that the law enforcement division is primarily the enforcement arm of the actions of the department and the decisions and programs and plans that the department implements. That being said, you'll hear updates from the rest of the department about activities and functions that the department has been undertaking. And I just want to remind everybody that enforcement engages in those activities and plans and projects and provides input, and where that has a tribal overlap or tribal engagement, enforcement remains engaged with tribes in the department in those spaces. So that's all I have, and thank you for your time.
Oh,
Thank you, Chris.
maybe we can go to Jay Rowan from Fisheries Branch next.
Yeah, thank you, Chuck. Good afternoon, Chair Hassler-Carmenson, Commissioner Zavaleta, tribal leaders and attendees. Again, Jay Rowan. I'm the Chief of Fisheries Branch here at Department of Fish and Wildlife. There's a few things I want to cover today. I'll cover the first two, and then I'm going to kick it over to our Fisheries Branch Tribal Liaison, Sarah Musselman, to cover the last one. So to start off with, the department has recently released over $200 million in drought, climate, nature-based solution grants. The solicitation is out, and the portal is available on our Watershed Restoration Grants webpage. So you can access those and apply for grants as needed for that various pots of money. And I'll put the links to the Watershed Restoration Grants page in the chat. The second thing is, I've mentioned before to this group, the department is in the process of drafting the CISA status review for Southern California steelhead. And hearing from folks and knowing how busy everyone is and how difficult it can be to respond to CISA requests for CISA comment letters, we're trying to diversify our options and create some additional opportunities for tribal input. So we're going to be conducting a tribal listening session on February 2nd, 2023. This will be a virtual session over Zoom, specifically for California tribes to provide input on any cultural information, other insights they may want to share with the department that are relevant during the development of the Southern California Steelhead CISA status review. So again, I'll put the Zoom link in the chat, and also we'll be sending out notification letters to tribes that are on the Native American Heritage Committee list, and we'll have some social media posts as well. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Sarah Musselman. She's going to give a short recap on the Emergency Clear Lake Hitch Summit that we had last week. So go ahead, Sarah.
Thanks, Jay. Hello, Chair Hostler Carmison, Vice President Zavaleta, Tribal Liaison Chuck Striplin, and tribal leaders and attendees. As Jay said, I'm Sarah Musselman. I'm the Inland Program Manager for Fisheries Branch and the Fisheries Branch Tribal Liaison, and was one of the people who was able to attend the Clear Lake Hitch Emergency Government Summit that we had on December 8th. So I'm going to give a little bit of a longer update on that, since there was a lot that happened at that meeting. So as I said, the summit took place on December 8th and consisted of tribal leadership, elders, and citizens presenting scientific research and oral accounts about the current state of Clear Lake Hitch, along with a list of specific asks from state, federal, and local agencies. The discussion was robust and the meeting was well attended and included representatives from five tribes, tribal elders, leaders, environmental directors, and scientists from Habamatel Pomo, Big Valley Band of Pomo, Robinson Rancheria, Middletown Rancheria, and the Scotts Valley Band of Pomo. In addition, there were Lake County staff from Water Resources Department and 2 members of the boards of supervisors, high-level staff from DWR, including Anacita Agustinez and their Chief Deputy Director, Cindy Messner, Geneva Thompson, Assistant Secretary Geneva Thompson, staff from the State Water Quality Control Board, Central Valley Flood Control District, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Fish and Game Commission. So there was a full day of meetings, about 8 hours of discussion, and a number of potential solutions and action items arose out of the meeting, including we've already expanded the Clear Lake Hitch Tribal Task Force, which is facilitated by Felipe Laluz, to include members from multiple state agencies and our own law enforcement division, which was requested by those Lake County tribes. Initially, in addition, we're working on a number of items, including the possibility of curtailments, different ways of doing frost protection, reviewing water rights, supporting tribes through coordination government to governments, working with cutting the green tape, trying to get money from our various grant programs into the hands of those tribes, and incorporating the county, looking at state financing for retirement of water rights. We're really trying to leave kind of no possibility unturned And I just want to end with saying a really big thanks to the Big Valley Band of Pomo for hosting and feeding everyone at the meeting. And just to point out that this was a collaborative effort, but it was really driven by the tribes, and we are doing our best to listen and hear what is the most important to the tribes, and you know, based on that, help to find the solutions to keep the Clear Lake hitch on the landscape.
Thanks, Sarah. Go ahead.
I just want to thank Sarah, and I was only able to join via Zoom, and the sound was really touch and go. I'm just wondering if you're able to share notes with me or not from that meeting. I understood that there might have been a transcriber there taking notes as well.
So that's actually in progress right now. There was wonderfully, the Big Valley was able to hire a Sam McGill, who's the Blue Ribbon Committee facilitator. And so he was there taking copious notes, which my understanding is that he is going to be sending those notes to Felipe LaLuz and to Sarah Ryan for distribution. So we're kind of still in the process of getting that formalized.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah.
I just want to add that I felt I was able to attend the summit, and I felt like the tribes did such a good job representing how important an issue this was to them, and pushing everybody in the room, just basically leaning in and asking the hard questions and asking everybody what actions they could commit to now while they're there at the table. I just want to express my gratitude for that. I think, you know, a couple of the people who are on today were also present. And part of that expression, both from elders in the room about the cultural importance of the hitch, and about the changes that have happened over the last several decades as a result of its decline. You know, from tribal representatives about what they would like to see as a coordinated response across the agency. So I think, you know, so much of the effectiveness and the progress that I feel like did occur thanks to the leadership that the tribe took. And I also really want to recognize and appreciate Felipe's from CDFW leadership in helping put the event on in a really, really short turnaround time. Chair Hoffler-Carmison suggested the summit at a Fish and Game Commission meeting just a couple of months ago. And so a lot of people had to rise to the occasion to make it happen. And it was much more progress than I thought we might be able to accomplish in such a short time. So thanks, everyone. And thanks again, Commissioner Hoffler-Carmison, for the idea of having that.
Thank you, Vice President. I too, I'm just extremely grateful and thankful to Big Valley and all the Pomo tribes and the department, all the work that was done. And you know, having an emergency summit is probably the best path forward in a situation like this. So I really look forward to seeing the action items and outcomes. So back to Jay, do you have more reports coming forward?
I don't. That wraps it up. But I would like to just take a brief second to also sort of echo Commissioner Zavaletta's comments and maybe expand, especially on the expanded and very robust science that the tribes in that area are bringing to the table. You know, coming with specific recommendations for flows in these streams. That's huge for us when we start talking to State Water Resources Control Board and others about curtailments, right? That's the first question they're going to come back to us and ask is, well, you want curtailments, how much water do you need, right? So having that information is going to be critical to this effort, and being able to share in that science with the tribes, I think it's getting us towards those co-management activities that we talked about earlier. I think it's going to be a good partnership for a long time. So I'm excited for that.
I was also very impressed with the presentations I saw online and the work that's been done by the tribes. Thank you.
No.
Chuck, who do we have up next?
Did we move to Seth?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chuck. Good afternoon, Chair Hostler Carmenson, Vice President Zavaleta, tribal leadership, and tribal members in attendance today. My name is Sarah Fonseca. I am a tribal cultural resource specialist with the department. Scott Garner sends his regards for not being able to attend the meeting today, but asked that I provide some updates from the wildlife branch. Understanding how tribes can be inundated with thousands of requests from everybody, we're going to highlight ones that we think might be of interest to tribes. We are still seeking, or will be seeking, input on some various regulations that are coming through. The elk regulations that will be initially heard during Thursday's commission meeting. We have already met with some tribes. We are still actively seeking input from them regarding the elk regulations. We also have the same going with the bighorn sheep regulations, which is reducing the number in zone 1 of mature rams. And we're continuing seeking input from tribes regarding the bear management plan. There will be an update provided, I believe, in January's commission meeting, but having tribal engagement and input is still ongoing. So if tribes are interested in more information, or I can direct them to the staff person, I will give my information to Chuck to put in the chat. Some upcoming CISA listings that tribes may be interested in. A recent petition to list the greater sage grouse is currently being evaluated. I know that that's pretty big in this more southeastern area. So having an eyeball for that one to come out might be good. And work will be resuming on the bumblebee static. So that's just a highlight to see if folks might be interested. Regarding land and access, the land management plan for the Bataquillos Lagoon is underway, and they're actually planning tribal outreach in January. Notifications will be sent out to the list received from the NHC. So look out for that for the meeting date. It is a tribal outreach, so open to the public, but tribal related. And if you have more questions, we'll get my info in there so you can contact me and I can direct you to the staff that are working on that. The contract that we've been working on with the access funding with Climate Science Alliance is still being developed, but we're actually going to be using wildfire resiliency funding, since the training does have components for wildfire resiliency, plant propagation, restoration, and we can have more flexibility with those funds. And so with that, we are always seeking projects with tribes to gain access to the department lands, whether it's interpretive, restoration work, just getting more collaboration with tribes. And so if there are any interest, they can contact me. And we're also working on a pilot project that would bring cultural burns to the department property. We're hoping that after this pilot project has been implemented, it will help us carry out the program throughout the state and start fully entering with tribes how to get cultural burns on the actual property. As Chuck mentioned, and Scott and Stu, there is a full-time position for our department tribal liaison. I sent Chuck a link to that position on Cal Careers. So the deadline is the 15th to fill that in. And if there are any questions, again, I will give it to Chuck. And at any time, you can email me, call me. And that is it.
I just a quick addition. You have to use your outside voice.
Yes, absolutely. I just wanted to make sure, I didn't want to interrupt, but I definitely wanted to provide just a little bit of more information about what Jay shared on our grant. So the department is engaging in a new process for our restoration, our watershed restoration grant, and that we're doing ongoing proposals. So we're accepting concepts so they can be kind of not fully formed. And we're really hoping that department staff can help, excuse me, applicants develop those concepts into ones that are a little bit more feasible. And so even if, if tribal members do have kind of not fully formed concepts, we definitely welcome you to still work through the web grant portal, and our staff will help support tribes through that process. This is an effort to get more grantees kind of at the table, and so definitely leverage kind of our expertise in that space. And so I just wanted to let folks know that we are kind of on and shifting the way that we do our grant program in a more ongoing basis versus having kind of one-time solicitation once per year. So thank you for that.
And that's huge.
And
I mean, for
I'm
those
really
who,
excited about
right, for
that
those who have
opportunity.
applied
So,
for grants before, I mean, that's amazing to have that kind of a system.
absolutely. So thank you for that.
And Chair Hustler Carmison, with that, I think we can move on to our Marine Region representatives.
Right.
Becky Oda.
Welcome, Becky. Hey, thank you very much. Just a sound check. Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, it's a miracle. There's been a lot of technical gremlins before. So, good afternoon, Chair Hustler Carmison and Vice President Zavaleta. I am Becky Oda. I am the Habitat Conservation Program Manager for the Department's Marine Region. I wanted to give you just a real quick update on the Marine Protected Area Decadal Management Review report. I reported out at your last meeting, and I'm happy to say that we are on track. The report is currently going through its final design and formatting and copy editing. We will soon be submitting it, an internal review, and so we'll be soon submitting it to our director for review, and expect that it will be finalized and completely done by the end of this month. And that means we will be able to make it public beginning of that first week of January, and it will be in the commission's binder in January for the February meeting. So we are on track, which is very exciting. I think it's looking great, and I hope everybody agrees. There's been a lot of work that has gone into this report, lots of partners, the least of which is not all the amazing contributions that the tribes have been making to the report. We have gotten not only the language content, the content on recommendations and lots of other information, but beautiful and amazing photos and artwork that has been incorporated into the DMR. So we really appreciate that. And I think it's gonna be a great report. I hope everybody enjoys it. We are going to be also planning, or we are planning on a public forum in March, sandwiched in between the MRC meetings. And we are going to be sending out more information about that public forum. Probably, we're thinking about the end of, in the next couple of weeks, but for sure in early January, on how to join. It's going to be in Monterey. It will be at the Monterey Fairgrounds and Event Center. So we'll send all of that out for everybody who are interested in coming to that forum. So, and tomorrow for the Fish and Game Commission meeting, Amanda Van Diglin from the MPA project staff will be giving the annual update for the commission on all things MPAs. And within that will be additional information about the DMR and that public forum. So just know that it's on track. We're headed that way, and can't wait to have everybody see it. That's it.
Hi, this is Ruthie Maloney. I just wanted to say thank you, Becky, and all staff with Strategic Earth and anybody that is a regional tribal consultant. It's been an honor to help get the information within that decadal management review. We're looking forward to having tribes there at the March meetings, and it's been really informative. So I thank you for the opportunity and including tribal representatives to do the outreach to gain this information for tribes. So thank you so much. Walk well.
Thank you, Ruthie.
Great work, Becky.
It was with a lot of help.
Thank you.
Chair Hostler-Comerson or Chuck, I see a hand raised from Emily, but I don't know if it's for me or if it's left over. So
we'll get to the comments here.
Okay. Great.
Chair Hostler-Comerson a chance to close us out on this item and offer any additional thoughts, and also to Vice President Zavaleta.
I'm sorry, Chuck, was Emily speaking to something else or to Becky's item?
Yeah, I wanted to mention just for the MPAs, thank you, Ruthie, for sharing, and Becky. It does lack some input from certain communities, such as the Kumeyaay community, unless there has been further follow-up from the attempt I tried to connect the folks with Strategic Earth. Ruthie, has there been any other than my attempt? Because if not, then my recommendation is just in that report, maybe include some type of narrative or just acknowledgement of which tribes are not included in this report. That way we know, the work that needs to be still completed, and so that they aren't left out from that narrative, even though they haven't given any input quite yet.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. And I have a couple of clarifying questions, Emily, because I didn't quite hear your question about whether which tribe was represented. Do you tell me again?
So there's 13 bands within the Kumeyaay Nation.
Okay.
And
yeah.
I was trying to do is connect Strategic Earth, who is doing, and the group with one of the committees down here in Kumeyaay territory, which is made of several delegates within the bands I mentioned.
Yes, thank you, Emily, for that clarification. Yeah, I don't know that we've been successful in connecting with them, but I will double check not only with Strategic Earth, but with my staff as well. And then we'll do what we can at this juncture to get that in the document if we can. And if not, we'll make it clear when we present it to the commission and thereafter. Sound okay?
And Emily, this is Ruthie Maloney. I just want to reiterate that what Becky says, we will definitely check with them. We do have that Southern California representatives, Jules Jackson, that works with the San Diego areas, but I definitely want to reach out to you and touch bases with you, Emily, just so that we can make sure that we get those bands included. And I will be there in January down in San Diego. So let's talk afterwards. Thank you.
And Commissioner Hostler-Comerson, I just wanted to mention that the aforementioned Jules Jackson is with us here in the room today, and I just wanted to give her an opportunity to say anything if she would like, and introduce you.
Wonderful.
I'm trying to use my middle school coaching voice.
There you go.
It's wonderful to be in attendance. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chuck, personally, for the invitation. And I look forward to meeting all of you. I've already had the pleasure of meeting Nicole. It was my first go around being a part of the MPA Decadal Management Review. I learned a lot, and I want to take accountability for having any type of, I would not refer to myself in any way, shape, or form. My father's people are from the East Coast, but it's representing California natives or Southern California natives. But take accountability that by no means was this comprehensive or fully inclusive of Indigenous folks and nations here in this area. Definitely tried my best, but for sure there's room for improvement, and I hope that we can continue to work towards more solutions to start far more in advance for the next decadal management review. To that end, I always say that my job with Indigenous youth is to work my way out of the job. So 10 years from now, my 15-year-old will be 26 years old. And I truly look forward to having them be far more integrated in this process and here to help in any way, shape, or form. Please contact me after, phone, email, call, have a cup of coffee, but really looking forward to getting far more ahead the next time around, and also really utilizing Indigenous principles of relationship building and reciprocity. And I'm grateful to hear conversations happening as it relates to intellectual property and data sovereignty. I know Climate Science Alliance takes the lead on such all of that great work. So super looking forward to next time around to doing a much better job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So are we moving along then to commission staff?
We can do that if there are no other comments from the room or online. It doesn't appear we have any other hands up. So we can move along to the Wildlife Resources Committee. Okay. My name is Ari Corman. I'm the Wildlife Advisor for the Commission. The Commission has 3 committees. This is one of them, the Tribal Committee, also the Wildlife Resources Committee, WRC and RC for short. I'm going to go over some of the things that we're doing in Wildlife Resources Committee. And you can see the work plan there on the screen. So for the January meeting, potential recommendations on inland sport fishing that has to do with boat limit.
Can you use your outside
yeah,
voice and speak out over the top of your computer because it blocks.
Put the computer down a little bit.
Perfect. There you go.
That has to do with inland boat limits. And let me just say, if you want any more information, then I'm just giving a short synopsis. If you want any more information on these topics, please just get a hold of me and we can talk about it and I can take you. Preference points. So there are several regulatory items on tap for January. There are recommendations for 5 items. Preference points and refunds for hunting tags. This has to do with wildfires and some other items and getting money back and points for wildfires and other issues. Wildlife rehabilitation has to do with wildlife rehabilitation facilities and permitting and a number of different items, animal care and the like. So there'll be some amendments to the regulations having to do with those facilities. Upland game hunting draws has to do with some mostly bird hunting draws that are currently under the old system, and that's moving them into the new electronic system. Well, it's not all that, but the updated fancy electronic system that they use now. Chronic wasting disease are some amendments to the regulations to prevent chronic wasting disease from entering California. It's a disease that we don't have here and we don't want here. And so updating the regulations to help stave off the entry of that disease in California. There is actually one more item which didn't make it to the work plan, but I will be asking to have it added at tomorrow's meeting, and that is Klamath dam removals. And that's something that tribes may actually be quite interested in, obviously for
some tribes involved in the planning and of that for decades now. So having to do with the removal of 3 California and 1 Oregon dams, the department is currently looking at some regulatory changes for fishing once those dams come down. And so we'll be discussing and potentially getting recommendations on that regulatory change. So if you're interested in hearing more about that and voicing concerns or suggestions, then please attend the next meeting in January. There's one more regulatory item, which isn't necessarily for recommendation, but it's really just for initial vetting. It's a chance to just get in early and start talking about it. And is the public lands that has to do with wildlife areas and ecological reserves, and some regulatory updates having to do with those. And so they'll be introducing what they're envisioning for the next regulatory package having to do management of management of those areas. So you can stay tuned for information on that. We will be continuing our discussions on the American bullfrog and non-native turtle stakeholder engagement project. The longstanding project have many different issues surrounding bullfrogs and non-native turtles, the ecological problems they cause, and some different solutions, some quite innovative solutions on maybe how to deal with some of those problems. And there are 2 other items. The bear management plan development, the department will be giving an update on that, seeking feedback on the development of that plan. And finally, petition 2021-017, which is big game hunting petition, which was referred to the committee for its recommendation. The department will be coming back with a whole slew of recommendations having to do with that petition. There was a large number of individual smaller recommendations encompassed in that petition, and the department will be providing its input recommendations on most of those in January. So we'll be discussing and potentially having committee recommendations. Lastly, I just want to note that we are extending the meeting. If you look at the website, I don't think it's been changed yet on the website, but it was slated for January 12th, and we're extending it to January 11th for half the day. You're right. You're right. Correction. We are asking the commission tomorrow, or not tomorrow, on Thursday, to extend it. That'll be staff's recommendation. To extend it for half a day on the 11th, probably starting about 1 o'clock. That's what I'm envisioning at this point. But we'll be asking the commission for that, just because it's such a large agenda. There's no way that we can get it done in a day. So we'll be having a day and a half schedule with the commission's approval. And also, in order to facilitate and help department staff attend that meeting, we'll be asking the commission to Sacramento, so that department staff can accommodate this sort of last minute change in their schedule and hopefully get plenty of participation from the department staff that need to be there. So stay tuned for those changes. And like I said, if you have any questions or want more information on any of the items, please get in touch with me, and I'll be happy to talk it over with you, let you know, and help you out for the discussion during the meeting. And that's all I have for WRC. Susan Ashcraft from MRC is going to go next.
Thank you, Ari.
Okay. That's all. That's a given. So thank you Chair Hostler Carmson and Vice President Zavaleta, I'm happy to thank you for all of you that are here and participating in this important meeting. In front of the slide, you have the current Marine Resources Committee work plan. And what you'll see is there's the topics listed that are currently referred to the committee by the commission. We don't talk about each of them at every meeting, and so you'll see in the columns on the right side what the committee most recently spoke about. There was a committee meeting in November last month, and several topics were discussed there. You can see those marked to indicate that, and then our very best estimate of what will be proposed for commission approval for the March of 2023 Marine Resources Committee meeting. And I do want to note just something about that March meeting, just to make sure I remember. The committee is recommending to split that March meeting into 2 days. You've just heard from Becky Oda from the department that the Marine Protected Area Decadal Management Review is coming out, and there's going to be a public symposium in March, and that is the day prior to the March Marine Resources Committee meeting that's currently scheduled. So the MRC is recommending to allow to focus that day after the symposium just on the MRC topic, to give just on the MPA Decadal Management Review topic, so that anyone that attended there can have plenty of opportunity to discuss those outcomes with the committee. And so the recommendation is to add another day, the day prior to the Decadal Management Review symposium, to cover all the other topics, rather than to lose traction on several topics that are coming up. So just a flag for that, and the commission will be receiving that recommendation tomorrow, the Wednesday commission meeting, along with other recommendations coming out of the November MRC meeting. I want to highlight for you, I'll go very briefly through what the committee just talked about, and then I want to give you, I wanted to flag a couple of things that have been of particular interest at previous tribal committee meetings, and from various tribal representatives that have previously spoken. So just going down the list, excuse me, while I pull this up for myself. So just a note that for red abalone, and that's that's been of particular interest to at tribal committee meetings in the past. The Department of Fish and Wildlife presented its field survey results from this year. The department did go out and survey certain locations to find out what the status is of the stock. And Dr. Schumann is here with the Marine Region. He's on Zoom, and so I don't want to speak for him if he would prefer to speak. The outcomes of that they reported were that I don't see him if he has his camera on. But yeah, I don't see him. The outcomes were that the abalone stock in Northern California is continuing to decline pretty severely, and we'll be reporting that to the full commission tomorrow. And based on that, the Marine Resources Committee is recommending to pause on the focus that has been on developing a fishery management plan, and to start and to focus more on recommendations that the department excuse me, that they support the department focusing on recovery planning. And so I know that has been of interest to you all. So you can, you know, any information that you want to hear more about that, please feel free to reach out to me or to Dr. Schumann, and we're happy to talk with you and further on that topic. Another topic is California halibut bycatch. So the California halibut fishery is undergoing a fishery management review with the department. And part of that management review includes evaluating how much the types and amounts of bycatch, meaning the unintended catch, to evaluate whether it's acceptable types and amounts. And if not, then what to consider actions that would improve management to reduce and minimize that bycatch. And so the Marine Resources Committee had that discussion about about the next steps for going through that kind of an evaluation. And we'll be presenting any outcomes from that at the March MRC meeting. So they'll be reporting publicly on what they've been finding as they've been evaluating the bycatch for whether it's acceptable or not. Also, you already heard about the MPA decadal management review. That was discussed, and again, encourage your participation in that that symposium, and then tracking the discussion at the Marine Resources Committee, and then it will be discussed also with the full commission in April. There was also a discussion about new state water bottoms, about aquaculture leasing. So the commission does approve authorizing a lease over state water bottoms, meaning ocean, you know, in estuaries, bays, estuaries, or state open ocean up to 3 miles for use for aquaculture, for commercial aquaculture. And the commission has been hearing a lot of interest from prospective new aquaculturists about the potential of applying for leased areas for shellfish or seaweed culturing. And the commission is required under the law to determine whether a new lease application would be in the public interest or not before ever going forward with the evaluation and then deciding whether to approve the lease or not after environmental review. So this project is one in which the department and commission staff together are working with the public on what criteria the commission should use to for a consistent way of evaluating any new application and making it transparent what they're going to consider when they make a determination whether a new lease that's applied for would be in the public interest or not. And you know, there's if this committee is interested in having its own discussion about that for a different perspective on what is public interest from a tribal perspective, you know, we would welcome that conversation. And finally, you're going to hear from our colleague Kimmy in just a moment about California's coastal fishing communities. California's coastal communities, also tribes, and many tribes are members of coastal communities and participate with other coastal residents and so this is about a policy related to how the commission would consider the needs and concerns and the priorities of coastal fishing communities in its decision making and how it can better support them. So you'll hear about that in just a minute. looking forward to the March MRC meeting, I do want to note that there is under the topic of emerging management issues, so about you see there's these kind of I don't know how to highlight it, but the next to the last category towards the bottom is kelp restoration and recovery tracking. This is also a topic that has been frequently discussed with the tribal committee, with input from tribes about concerns about the decline in kelp resulting from the marine heat wave and other ocean conditions and climate related factors on the North Coast. And so our hope and our goal is to have an update from various agencies and collaborators and partners that are tracking the status of giant kelp and bull kelp, mostly bull kelp, but and monitoring for recovery. And so that is, if you're interested in participating in that, you're also welcome to please reach out to me and talk to me. Right now we're gathering a list of the several agencies and entities that are collaborators with the department, and to come together for knowledge sharing and discussion. And that is it for my update.
Thank you, Susan. That was an excellent update. Lots of great work.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. I just want to interject. I didn't necessarily expect us to run this late. I just want to apologize that I have a call at 4:30 that I have to step out for, and it's not anything personal, whatever item we're on.
Yeah, for the potential items for the next February. Oh, I'm sorry.
And then Kimmy?
Yeah.
Jedi and Kimmy.
Okay. All right.
To Kimmy.
Thank you. So under the Jedi category, I just have one thing I want to report out on behalf of our Deputy Executive Director, Rachel Galante, who's not able to be here this afternoon. But I want to share that in May, the solicitation for a contractor to assist the commission in developing our Jedi plan was distributed. And despite being viewed by over 100 potential contractors, we ended up with no applications submitted, which was disappointing. But in order to remedy that, we submitted a request for information in July to gather additional information about how to make the contract more appealing to potential contractors. And we've since revised the contract based on that feedback. Most significantly, the budget has been increased to $150,000, which is fantastic. And I want to thank Nicole for helping us do that. And the revised contract is now making its way through that internal, of course, there was an internal approval process. So once we get through that, it's going to be advertised in the coming weeks. And for anyone who may be interested in seeing updates on that solicitation, or perhaps even submitting a proposal, please do join our Jedi mailing list. We have an electronic mailing list specifically to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and that you can do that from our homepage, website. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah.
And is Susan doing the Coastal Fishing Communities project?
Actually, Kimmy is going to give that update.
Okay, great.
Good afternoon, Chair Hostler, Parmesan, and Vice President Zavaleta, and everyone here today. My name is Kimmy Rogers, and I am the California Sea Grant State Fellow at the Commission. I'm pleased to be here with you all and share an update about the development of the Commission's Coastal Fishing Communities Policy. The development of this policy is an initiative under the Commission's Coastal Fishing Communities Project
to better recognize coastal fishing community goals and the impact that different options for pursuing conservation and utilization goals and fisheries management decisions may have on those communities. In April 2021, the Commission gave staff direction to develop a new policy on coastal fishing communities based on MRC recommendations, and the Commission directed staff to work with stakeholders to develop a draft policy. So today I will be sharing the journey and progress we've made since the last time I presented to this committee in April, and then I will briefly go over the draft policy and our next steps. So this past spring, we integrated feedback that we received on our draft policy with the intention of sharing the revised draft in a second workshop at the beginning of summer. However, as we incorporated feedback, the draft increased in length and specificity, causing concern that the policy had lost focus and would not be adaptable to different strategies. So after several internal discussions in spring, we postponed our second workshop that was scheduled in June to reevaluate our policy approach and updated the Marine Resources Committee in July. Some of the key feedback we heard in spring included that the policy was too detailed and lacked adaptability to changing times. We heard confusion about what the overall purpose of the policy was. We also heard that there should be greater reference to the effects of climate change on coastal fishing communities. We received conflicting views about how involved the department should be in implementing this policy versus partners. And we heard concerns about how this policy would conflict with the Commission's restricted access policy. And since the July MRC, we've been working hard to address those concerns and get to the root of what we want this policy to achieve and how the Commission, with the help of its partners, can do it. And we developed a revised draft policy. At the November MRC, we introduced the outline of the draft policy. And just a couple of weeks ago on December 1st, we held a second policy drafting workshop that was open to the public. We had about 50 people participate, including commercial and recreational fishermen, various agencies, academics, and some non-governmental organizations. We had a lot of great conversation and are still accepting feedback on the revised draft. So before I continue with the next steps, I'm going to share the link to the policy itself and walk through some of the major revisions that we made. So there are several key elements that we focused our revisions on. The first was structure. We aim to make clearer sections in the policy to improve overall readability. We also wanted to address the length and specificity of the policy, so we made statements broader and less prescriptive, which means we also placed fewer directives on the department to emphasize that the department is one of several agencies and partners that works with coastal fishing communities, and some partners may be better equipped to fulfill the policy goals better than others. And while the policy is broader and less prescriptive, we have been moving some of the more specific items into items from the initial draft and feedback we've heard into a possible implementation plan. Secondly, we rearranged the order of the working definition of coastal fishing communities and made some minor changes. Third, we bolded a new section called policy settings. This section describes other current state and federal policies that highlight the significance of coastal fishing communities and states why the Commission's coastal fishing communities policy is still needed. The final sections are called policy statement and policy strategy, which states what the overall mission of the policy is. The statement continues to say that the Commission will pursue the policy through 3 strategies. The first strategy is to understand issues and identify solutions through meaningful coastal fishing communities engagement. This includes facilitating collaboration with coastal fishing communities and developing a mechanism that leads to continued engagement. By promoting engagement and collaboration, the Commission will be better informed of coastal fishing community needs and the community-driven solutions that may help. Which helps lead to our second strategy, Commission action. Ensure coastal fishing communities' interests are reflected in Commission decision-making. Through direct engagement and collaboration with coastal fishing communities,
fisheries management options can better reflect their needs, which can lead to commission decision-making that better supports coastal fishing. The third proposed strategy is about supporting capacity in coastal fishing communities through external efforts, which is an opportunity for the commission to support and leverage the strengths of partnerships and other state agencies that work with coastal fishing communities. The commission is in a position to be able to uplift coastal fishing communities by getting all the folks in a room to strategize and coordinate. The commission can also lean on its partners, inclusive of but not limited to the department, to support coastal fishing communities, whether that's through something like supporting infrastructure or filling in data gaps. Ultimately, the aim for these strategies is to work together and be adaptive to the changes our ocean and coastal fishing communities face. As I mentioned earlier, we did host a public workshop a couple of weeks ago to present the draft to coastal fishing community members and partners and others interested in the project. To my knowledge, we had one tribal representative register, but were unable to attend. So I would like to extend the opportunity for folks here today to reach out to me if they would like to be a part of this process, and I will stick my information into the chat. I'm happy to talk about the project, the policy, and I'm also happy to walk through the policy with those who are interested. I can also share the recording of the workshop once we get it onto our YouTube channel, so you'll just need to share your information. Since the workshop, we've been working through some of the comments we received and how to include feedback into the next iteration of the policy, with the goal of bringing the next draft to the March MRC for potential recommendation to bring a final policy to the full commission in April. So we're still receiving feedback and comments on this draft, and we would love to hear from anyone that would like to share some feedback on the draft. So thank you very much. And thanks, Chuck.
Thank you, Kimberly. Excellent report. It does look much more streamlined and easy to understand and readable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Kimberly?
We don't have anything from the room here, and I'm not seeing any hands on Zoom. Thank you so much, Kimmy. And thanks to our Executive Director and Vice President Zavaleta, who are leaving the room now. Thanks for joining us today. And our only remaining items today are the potential agenda items for the February 2023 Commission meeting and the Commission rulemaking timetable. Those are both in the meeting materials for today's meeting. And unless we have any questions or you have any suggestions for those, Chair Hustler-Carmison, I think we can move on to number 6.
No questions on 5, and yes, let's move to 6.
And again, if anybody has any questions on the future timetable or the future rulemaking timetable or the items for the February 2023 meeting, you're very welcome to email those to us directly. I'll put my information in the chat. Otherwise, we'll move on to proposed modifications to the Tribal Committee work plan. Ari, if you can maybe throw that up on the Zoom. Chair Hustler-Carmison, I don't have any recommended changes or revisions to the Tribal Committee work plan for the next meeting in April.
I did hear a representative from Big Valley, I believe it was Fred, that did mention taking a look at plastics and how they're affecting our marine environment. Is Fred still on?
He is?
Yes, I'm still on.
Fred, would you reiterate what you had said earlier, and let's see if there's any way we can address that within our work plan?
Sure. What I was referring to is what a lot of talk here in the room is about climate and having a solution, but then having this indigenous perspective of understanding what it was like back when, how the world was to how it is now. And what it is that plastic, we never had plastic before, but we have it so much now. And there's things like such as the global Pacific garbage patch, where there's huge plastics, and the plastics, it retains so much heat. And then when it degrades into carbon and CO2 and acid water. And we're starting to understand this climate change effect, but then really pinpointing it now to things such as microplastics pollution, just washing up on the beaches, on the shores. And what is so beautiful about the northern coast is that our food system, I'm a traditional seaweed harvester. I've been going, my grandma showed us that spot, and we pick out every little bit of sand, seashell, bug, and I can only imagine how we would feel when plastics washes up on our shores, and it's not there yet. So to create this outreach for tribes, for funding, we're always talking about funding. How do we get funding? And how we do it, tribe, is we issue fines to those plastic producers. I said the Attorney General of California, he is subpoenaing those plastic manufacturers. So tribes with their sovereignty are able to adopt code, adopt resolution faster than the city government to set up, I guess, MPAs or their traditional land somehow, some way. So through a monitoring program where we watch the ocean and see look for microplastics and kelp and other life. But when that microplastic comes on shore, the system within the tribe to issue fines to those producers. And I work a lot with the plastic industry, the Fortune 500s, the ones that produce a lot of that plastic. And now they're being federally mandated to recycle 50% of the plastic. But then the catch is the plastic can't be recycled. So then it makes those Fortune 500s very scared that it can't be recycled. And the threat now of microplastic pollutions is getting bigger and bigger, climate change bigger and bigger, and identifying causes and to how to mitigate strategies, tribes. I'm sorry if I'm just going off. There's a lot to it. It's a lot of our work is the Native American Fiber Program, where we support tribal communities with their traditional fiber and hemp fiber to replace plastics. And we work a lot with several Fortune 500, Ford, Hyundai, John Deere, Amazon, 3M, and they're all now knowing that plastics is being banned, and they're searching for the replacement, which is tribal hemp, our advocacy work. And it is working at our research center at the Center of Bioplastics and Biocomposites located in North Dakota State University. Yeah, there's a lot. Sorry.
What I'm thinking about is possibly at a future meeting to do a joint presentation, to put it on an agenda, and possibly give you some time to do a presentation, and then maybe also ask the department to do a brief update if they have any information to contribute. Chuck, what do you think about that?
I think it's a great idea. In fact, one of my former employers, the San Francisco Estuary Institute, one of my colleagues was one of the pioneers behind the science and being able to detect and measure the penetration of microplastics into the environment throughout the water column and accumulating in tissues and the bodies of animals. So I think there's jurisdictionally, it can be a kind of a weird issue, a new issue. But I think there's definitely a thread into the kind of work that the commission does. So yeah, I fully support adding that at a future meeting.
Great. Thank you for bringing that up.
President or Chairwoman Hostler Carmazin, this is Craig Schumann chiming in.
Craig.
Hi, how are you? I would just like to offer a friendly amendment to include the Ocean Protection Council in that presentation. They do have a microplastic strategy and have been doing a lot of work on microplastics. So they're light years ahead of the department on that territory. So I think would benefit from bringing them in.
That'd be great. And then if the department wants to make any comments, you can, as always.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So we will add that potential new agenda item for commission consideration. And then we will move the discussion to the full commission regarding the ad hoc work group on subsistence harvest. We will report out on that and get the input from the other commissioners on how we move forward in 2023 with either moving it to the tribal committee or continuing the ad hoc working group in 2023. So definitely need folks to make comment and definitely need to have a full discussion on that item, because I too am hearing extremely diverse opinions and mixed remarks. So we want to get it right. We want to do it right. We want to make sure that we are leading the subsistence harvest discussion in a very successful way with outcomes that can move forward. So thank you for your patience with that discussion today. Really appreciate everybody being on for the last, 3.5 hours or more. Great participation, and thank you so much. Any closing comments, Chuck or staff?
We just have one last item of if anyone has any public comments for items not on the agenda, we can hear those now. And if none, then I think we are good to adjourn. I'm not seeing any.
This is Fred. I have a comment about the Clear Lake Hitch. And I heard I'm glad I came today because I missed the meeting, but then I heard the report. And I just have to say that it was very informative, but it's missing the culprit. It's not listening to what the tribes are saying. That alcohol, wine, vineyards are responsible for the death of our fish. The agency just, I don't think, understands that. And see that death there of the fish, millions, is what we call spirits. And I hope the agency could start understanding these things. That you see many Netflix movies where there's the death and there's spirits, and understanding that paranormal, supernatural becomes part of the agency. And the agency needs to understand that with these animals dying, there was a way, the traditional way was the basket to California. To catch all the animals in the basket is the tooling to remain in constant prayer, to be able to communicate with the animals. And once you have that basket, you go to the roundhouse. I really wish you guys could have went to our roundhouse. You could look on your Google phone, Earth, and go to up top Soda Bay Road, and you'll see a roundhouse. And there, that is the oldest church in the state of California. It still goes to this day. And it's important for people in the agency to understand that the animals, they spoke a language, the water, the movement of the water, the wind, all of those sounds of nature were captured, remade inside the roundhouse. So what our ceremonies, what we do is where we call back the spirits home. And the spirits, now with the basket, you can communicate very well. So around what comes into the people or into the roundhouse is the people, and they pray. They have 2 pennies in their hands, praying, giving their last pennies, all that they have for their prayers to come true. In the middle, there is a fire, a big fire, and that fire gives light, vision. The spirits can come home and they give message. They're wondering, why doesn't the agency understand this? So they ask the tough questions because they're already dead. So they wonder, where is that commissioner that said he owned a vineyard in Lake County? Is he responsible for all those deaths of the fish, his vineyard? Investigations such as that of this agency really need to take place, because the trust amongst the tribes, we're saying it, but you won't say it because alcohol is not a part of our culture. So we see what's happening. When you went to the rancheria, I hope you see. So they blame that commissioner, specifically him, because he said at the meeting, he owned a vineyard. He is the responsible one. That's what the spirits say inside the roundhouse. But see, the spirits, they give warning. It hasn't happened yet. Nothing has happened. They warn, they warn, they warn. And what they say, shift the blame, Mr. Commissioner. It's not your fault. It doesn't create a bias within the agency. No, it doesn't. You must shift the blame. So when you leave the rancheria, you go up top on Soda Bay Road, and you'll see the first left, Reeves Lane. He's dead. He was the man who told all of our land because it was his manifest destiny. And as you continue to leave, he says, shift the blame, the spirits, shift the blame. Then you take the next right off the rancheria. There's the sign, Stone Road, Stone Road. Stone was the general who gave the orders to all his men to kill us all. He tells the commissioner, keep going, shift the blame. Then as the commissioner leaves, he passes the town of Kelseyville. Kelsey was the man who turned all us the way we are now, socially awkward because of what he has done, the murder. But then he tells commissioner again too, shift the blame. So when the commissioner leaves, he thinks he's safe. There's the sign to shift the blame. It is Beckenstoffer, him. He is the one who owns vineyards all over. And again, alcohol is not our culture, so it's easy for us. So this commissioner, the spirits are blaming him because he's the one who says he owns it. And now is this the bias in the agency? They won't say alcohol related, but the tribe keeps saying it, but they won't. It really exposes the 10 years that only the agency has been working with the tribes, with the social inequity and white privilege, basically. Because for myself, the spirits tell me I've been hunting for 30 years and the agency has been only working for tribes for 10. My grandfather hunted way before. That really goes to show what is happening. So that to end this, the tribes have always had their things taken from them, the gold, the land, the children, now the fish in this billion-dollar industry, billions and billions and billions. That Beckett stuff where he got it too. I really wish this agency would subpoena those ones there, Beckenstoffer, so he could hear us talk of the death, how we are suffering our 10,000-year-old food system. This agency has a lot of proving to do, a lot of proving. And right now the blame is being shifted on that commissioner because he is the one at the last meeting, our emergency meeting, he stood up and he said he owned the vineyard there. So we questioned him about it. But like the spirit said, shift the blame, commissioner. That is the end of my comment. And thank you.
Thank you, Fred. I see Emily has her hand up. Was that from previous Emily, or is it a new hand?
That is new. Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, I just had a quick recommendation real quick, when planning these meetings, to directly reach out to the homeland community so that they're involved and included. As you can see in the meeting room there are no Kumeyaay people present from what I was told. So just including the homeland communities when planning these meetings. Thank you.
I agree. This is Ruthie Maloney, and I just have to say thank you, Fred, for your words, because it is very important for the agency to understand that the people who policies are affecting of tribal people are very real. And, you know, I think it's time that, you know, we're coming together as tribal members to be a voice for the people and for our cultural rights. So I think as going forward, it would be really good for the Fish and Game Commission to also be working with like the Department of Water Resources, working with the Agriculture Department. We've got to come together to look at how this affects these like the hitch and the Kumeyaay there. I'm just saying anything that affects tribal people on their lands, it's time to include the tribes, but also start to work together so that tribes can be looking at who, you know what permits are being given for permitting for water, for agricultural, or more wine vineyards. You know, if we know that they're contaminating the water in the lakes, then, you know, something has to be done at that level, to where we got it. You also have bass fishing events that are held on a weekly or weekend basis. You know, something at the Fish and Game Commission, I know it's an economic viable source of income, but at what expense, and at what expense to the people that rely on the hitch. So I think it's really good to look at the big picture and really start to look at the agencies and the like I said, the permits and the policies, that so that we can start to build and really see what they are as a whole, a holistic view of how we can start managing these resources. Again, thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruthie. Chuck, anything else on your end?
That's all from San Diego. I think we are good to adjourn if you have nothing else for us.
No, just again, thank you to everyone for your participation and sharing your thoughts and opinions, and for your work for the tribes and California nations. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you, everyone.